2019, and they recommended the maximum concept as their preferred choice. That master plan was then approved by the City Council on March 17th of 2020, again with the maximum concept selected. And that was done not saying that we wanted to build the maximum concept, but to allow us to permit that, because as the permitting works out, it's easier to ask for more and not put it in rather than to ask for a certain amount and then all of a sudden you do your final design and you have a couple boat slips you want to put in and you have to start the whole process over. After considering three sizes for the dry storage building, a low range, a mid range, and a high range, the low range being a 130-foot building, mid range 150, and high range 186 to 213, the council selected the high range building on July 16, 2021. So we're here today to present phase one of the Marina plan. And that includes the dry storage building, the adjacent seawall, and the adjacent floating docks. If council gives us their approval, we would then complete the site plan and present it to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their action. And then once the Planning and Zoning Commission has granted approval, we would then seek council's authorization to go out to bid. Once we did that, receive bids, we bring those bids back to council for a contract award, and then move forward with the contract award with construction. We see that process, if everything went well, of taking somewhere between 18 and 24 months. What I want to impress upon everyone is that each phase of the Marina development will come back before City Council for their action on that phase. We're here today to talk about just phase one, which is the, as I mentioned, the dry storage building and associated docks. With that, Sean Collins is going to give us a little bit of history, and then we'll move forward in the presentation.
Thank you. Just a quick, Holt can actually kind of pull up the next slide there to get into some of the years and dates, but I'll just kind of summarize that a little bit. You know, the first dock was put in 1926, and there's portions of that original dock that are still in place today. Some of the timbers actually came from the original bridge that was from the mainland to the barrier island. So it's some pretty wild stuff underneath there if you want to come down and get your waders on and have a closer look. But after that, you know, the next dock was put in 1940, the north dock was constructed, the original one. And then in 1946, the south dock was constructed. 1954, after some interesting conversations with the county's dragline or somebody with the dredge, the East Lagoon was dredged out with depth of 6.5 feet. Then the north dock was replaced again in 1960, and that's the current dock that's in place now, that concrete dock. In 1967, just south of the yacht club where the dry storage building is, Safari Marina had built the dry storage and had put in docks there. 1977, central dock renovation. I believe that's when they covered up good portions of the center dock, where they kind of took the 2x4s and laid them on edge and then put the concrete cap over the top, which is what's still in place today. Lots more going on. The Lost Tree Village, Safari then sold in 1986 to Safari Marina sold it to Lost Tree Village, which was then the second owner for the South Complex. 1987, the Marina Facilities Building was built. That houses the showers. It had the dockmaster's apartment upstairs, laundry room, captain's lounge, and that was expanded a couple of years later to include a little bit of an addition. In 1988, the first mooring field was placed in the state of Florida. 42 moorings. Many other municipalities and areas have always kind of looked at Vero Beach to see what we've done and how we've done it to make it work for their areas. Most recently, Jensen Beach, been talking a lot with their harbor master down there, you know, for how we work things and how to make things run a little bit smoother for him. So all across the state, people are still looking to us for advice and expertise on how to manage their mooring fields. let's see, 2002 was probably the newest addition to the city marina docks, and that was the expansion of the now current fuel dock. Because the fuel pumps used to be just right adjacent to the office until 2002. So that gave us 8 additional slips and the 2 fueling stations, which makes things a little bit easier for boat traffic in and out. Then in 2007, when the South Complex, the Wall Street Village Marina, was up for sale again, there was some neighborhood concerns about what the property was going to be used for. There was some talk of town to maybe get sold and developed into condos. The community largely came together and decided that they didn't want that to happen, and ultimately the city purchased the South Complex. And here we are today. You know, Monty touched on some of the introductions and a little bit how we got to in the past few years with the master plan and possibly, you know, selling the marina or leasing it out. And again, the community overwhelmingly said, keep it a city marina, and here we are. We have aging infrastructure all over the place. You know, we're maintaining it constantly, but stuff has a service life, and as we kind of showed in the slides, stuff has been in there a long time, and the marine environment is a harsh environment. So that's pretty much it. You know, it's just stuff's old and wore out, and it's lived its life, and it served, you know, all the stakeholders well.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Jason's going to take us through, and some of this is a little dry because it's a requirement, so bear with us. We've done the best we can to make it invigorating. So,
How you can make planning exciting, huh? So I just want to give just a brief overview. There's a lot of talk of different planning documents and regulations that we have in the city. So I want to give an overview of how these different documents relate to each other, what's required of us by the state, by state regulations, as we review projects, any development in the city. There's basically 3 things you'll kind of hear about. One is a comprehensive plan, which the comprehensive plan is required by state statute to be adopted. This requirement has existed since, well, it started in the 1970s and actually became a legal requirement in the 1980s. The city's first future land use plan was in 1975, and our current plan was just adopted in 2018. The comprehensive plan basically requires us to have data analysis where you look at different elements that affect development in the community, such as environment, transportation, and have a comprehensive set of policies to set certain maximums of development on property in the city. And what it has included is what's called a future land use map, which we must comply with in terms of development of any property in the city, and then certain policies that relate to those, to the different land use designations that we have in the comprehensive plan. So essentially this is the guiding document, and it has legal authority in the city. And there's other states, I know many of you, all of us have come, well, many of us have come from different states and relocated on one of them to Florida. You could be from areas, you hear about zoning, but they don't have comprehensive plans because Florida is very unique in that it has a legal requirement of every municipalities to have a comprehensive plan and an adopted future land use map and abide by those policies in those plans. It's not just a suggestion, we have to follow it. The next layer is what we call our land development regulations, or might be commonly referred to as zoning, but it's beyond the zoning. These are all the development requirements from the sign code to the tree preservation code, the landscape code, stormwater code that any development has reviewed. This is where the policies become more specific regulations in the land development, in the city's actual adopted code. And any of our regulations we have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. The city actually, is one of the first cities in Florida to have zoning. As a very small municipality. Remember, the city was founded in 1919, and its first code was just 7 years later. It adopted. They did a land use plan and a code in 1926. If you ever want to look at it, it's up in the hallway next to the planning office upstairs. Is the city's first code. It was a very simple code. It basically divided the city into 4 different areas: residential, apartment, commercial, and industrial. Our code today is far more complicated. It's more of what we call a traditional zoning code. Our code that we're operating off today is essentially dated from 1978, but it's continuously updated. And then you have the site plan review process, and that's where we look at any development that we do, or any developments proposed in the city. They have to be reviewed to make sure it's consistent with the comp plan, comply with all pertinent regulations into the land development regulations, and also comply with any federal and state regulations. So in terms of the comprehensive plan, these maps, if you ever want to look, they are all on the city's website. This is the future land use map and what it designates in and around the marina. The marina itself, you see, and the yacht club are designated, or what we call the city marina, the proper area. The yacht club and the dry storage building are all designated with commercial land use. What was referred to as the boat basin, which was constructed in 1954, that actually has a park designation on it. And then the residential areas just to the north and to the a little bit to the west of the marina, or I'm sorry, to the east of the marina, they have residential high land use designation and residential medium. And actually, this is in terms of land use planning. You'll see that the residential medium, and through our policies, and this is common planning practice, you want to have kind of higher density residential uses or designations create the transition and the buffer between the commercial area and the what we call the single family or residential low area. And you'll see that's how our plan has essentially designated the areas in and around the marina. It's using the residential high and the residential median land uses as that transition, and the park as the transition, kind of buffering to the more single-family, low-density areas of the Central Beach neighborhoods. And also the other thing I'll point out is the Indian River Drive East is considered a collector road, which also creates kind of a separation from those more intense uses of the residential medium and the residential low uses. So this is kind of the general land use pattern. So it's actually a very good land use pattern that we have established there in our future land use map. For the marina itself, like I mentioned, its land use is designated commercial and park use. In our comp plan, it sets certain maximum development that can occur in the commercial land use. So for the commercial land use, it can either be developed at a maximum of 15 units per acre or 30 rooms per acre if it's a hotel use, 15 if it's a multifamily or some type of residential use. Intensity, the maximum intensity is how much building can be built on a piece of land. In this case, and that's what we call floor area ratio. Sorry, these are these technical planning terms, but the maximum FAR, intensity of commercial development, is at 1.0. In the park, so this is the boat basin, the maximums, obviously no residential development can occur in the park land use, and intensity in terms of any type of structure or building or floor area, it's a maximum of 0.4 area. And just so you understand for those how the floor area ratio is calculated, you take the square footage of the land, you multiply it by that number, 0.4 or 1, and that gets you the maximum square. So anything that has to be developed, that's the maximum development that is allowed by our comprehensive plan in those two designations. So in terms of the marina itself, that means the maximum development could be 51 units of residential in the commercial area. This is just when I'm talking about the commercial lands owned by the city as part of the marina, so I'm not counting the yacht club. And hotel units would be 103 units. Commercial building would be up to 151,000 square feet. And then in the park area, you could have a maximum of 16,600 square feet. And that would generate, and this is the kind of analysis that's done when the city was establishing its first future land use plan, they looked at the impacts at a high level of the different land use destinations on the road network. And so theoretically, the traffic generation from that type of development at maximum would be about 6,100 daily trips from that area if it was built out to those maximum developments. The other thing I want to just kind of briefly touch on, I've heard some discussion about, well, what about other sites? What about putting this all over at Three Corners? Well, the comprehensive plan sets out certain types of, again, it recognizes, it talks about maximum development, and our comprehensive plan talks about when it comes to marinas, that any type of marina, existing marinas or expansion marinas will occur in the commercial land use, and where we have in the comp plan identifies 5 existing marinas in the city marina is one of those, and that any expansion would occur in essentially in those areas where there's existing marinas and it's zoned for C1, what we call the C1M, which is the marina zoning. In terms of Three Corners, obviously we've gone through quite a lengthy visioning process where we've talked about more of a day dock marina with some minor commercials, what came out of the plan. During the process, it was talked about putting, and there were alternatives that were presented as dry storage buildings being placed on that location, but the Three Corners steering committee did not recommend that to City Council, and that was not part of the final master concept plan. And I would like to point out the current land use designation of the what we call Three Corners, or essentially the former power plant and really I guess I'm really talking about the Two Corners, which are adjacent to the river, has government use. This is the current land use designation. It has government use and it has industrial zoning. Essentially allows a power plant, industrial type service buildings for the government to be located, such as our power plant and our sewer. The city, after, right now, we're in a process where we're about to go out to a referendum. If it passes, the city's going to have to go in and actually amend the comprehensive plan, do the data analysis, look at the environmental impacts to justify the placement of those, and what we're really talking far more recreational marina uses at the Three Corners. So that's, there, we're going to have to go, here in the marina, our existing city marina, we have all the entitlements. It's proposed, or it's basically designated in our comprehensive plan. That's where the expansion of marinas are to occur. It is not in the Three Corners that way. So, and we'll have to go through the data analysis to support that, and that'll be a comprehensive plan process that we'll go through. And just so you know, a comprehensive plan amendment process involves not only going to our planning and zoning board for their recommendations, city council amending or adopting it, but before adoption, something like this, we'll have to go up to the state for the state's review. And there is this different state agencies can provide comments back, and we might have to, through that process, there could be changes to the ultimate policies. But so that's what it'll take to put even what we have to do right now is a vision for Three Corners to occur at that location. The zoning, so I would move from the comprehensive plan into the actual zoning, adopt the zoning for the area. The marina, overlaying that commercial land use is, like I mentioned before, is the C1M zoning. This is our specific zoning district for marinas. It allows marina uses, hotels, restaurants, and other commercial uses associated with the marina. The area that is designated park, the boat basin, has a P2 zoning. That is our parks zoning district, which has certain maximum development and certain more active recreational uses can be allowed there. For instance, the P2 zoning, where the dog park is, the baseball field, and then going down to Riverside, that's all also zone P2. And that's in the P2 zoning. You can have not only the active recreational uses, you can have museums, theaters also could be in that zoning. In terms of the existing uses, this is in our comprehensive plan. When they did the comprehensive plan, they identified these were the existing uses as of 2018 when they adopted the plan. It identifies the marina as a recreational use. You see it's in the green, it's designated recreation. You'll see where the Waddell building actually sits is commercial because we had an office use in there. So I just want to briefly, what's the difference? I think I've heard a lot of talk about industrial use versus recreational use. An industrial marina is a shipyard. You'll see the picture under there. That's an industrial use. What we have here is a recreational use with just some associated or accessory commercial uses to it. Our marina is a recreational marina. The other thing I just want to briefly touch on, the different sites in and around the marina and some of the adjacent sites. kind of compare what's allowed by the maximum, what's allowed by essentially the zoning and the comprehensive plan versus what's actually built. In terms of the marina, as I mentioned before, it can have 103 hotel rooms, because hotels is a permitted use in the zoning district, the C1M zoning district. Could have up to 151,500 square feet of floor area, again, by the maximum of the comprehensive plan in that zoning district. In the park area, you can have a maximum of about 16,600 square feet. The height limit is 35 feet. Open space, it requires a minimum of 25 feet. But in terms of the actual, it only has, the marina has about 40% open space. Obviously, there's no hotel. In terms of the actual floor area, there's about 15,000 square feet of building area in the marina versus the 150. So the marina is developed nowhere near the maximum it could be developed. Generate 6,100 traffic trips a day. The actual development, according to these traffic numbers, you know, these are coming out of the county. The city cooperates with the county in terms of traffic concurrency. The traffic concurrency, they use what's called the 10th edition of the ITE manual, and that's where these numbers and in the county's impact study for traffic, they adopt certain trip generation per 1,000 square feet for different uses, and that's where these numbers, how I'm coming out to these numbers. And so the actual traffic generation based on what's adopted by the county is about 607 traffic from the city marina. So the city marina is not developed to its maximum. The yacht club is a little closer to its maximum development. They could have about 27,800 square feet, but they have about 8,000 square feet of development. They have, so they're pretty, and because it's more of a restaurant use and the parking required for restaurant use, they're pretty much at the last expansion they had, I believe, was in, I might get corrected by the yacht club people, but I believe I looked in the files in 1991, they kind of pretty much got to the maximum development they can do on the two sites they have with the actual marina, their actual waterfront site, and then the overflow parking lot. And then you got Vero Towers, which was a building built in 1972. And as I mentioned, that's before our first master plan when we established maximum developments. And this is, to today's code, is a non-conforming structure pursuant to 642327. Just want to lay that out there. It's non-conforming. It's basically based on the density allowed for the site it's on would only allow 5 units. It actually has 42. 8,000 square feet of floor area, 48,000 square feet is what it actually has. And of course, its height is 35 feet, but it's actually built to 60 feet. So it exceeds the maximum development of that area that would be allowed. Really all, I want to now just talk about the major site plan review process. And I think it was kind of alluded to before, but I'll just go through a little more detail. This is the workshop for the major site plan. When projects are located near adjacent to a residential district, and they're over a certain square footage, they require a neighborhood workshop. That's why this one is being required a neighborhood workshop. Once the workshop is done, the applicant, which is the marina, and their engineers working with them will compile all the information, take the sign-in sheets, the minutes from the meeting, and then once they have all their site plan documents complete, they will file an application with the planning office. The project will then go under review by the planning staff and the engineering staff. Those are the two primary departments that review, but it does get circulated to a few other departments, such as our utilities. And we will review for compliance with the site plan review standards in the land development regulations. And then once it meets, or staff has determined that the submitted site plan meets all the criteria, all the regulations for the type of application, it then gets scheduled for a planning board hearing, which will be a 15-day notice. The site will be posted for that, and the planning board holds a quasi-judicial hearing where the project gets its final approval. Just some of the criteria that what we go through as staff. First of all, we're looking at the consistent, and this is all coming out of this is what's required of a major site or any site plan out of our code. It requires us to review it for consistency with the city's comprehensive plan. That's the objectives and policies. Has to comply. This is one of the major elements. Is number 2, we're looking to make sure it's complying with all the land development regulations the city has adopted in Part 3 of the city code, which is the zoning district, what everyone refers to as zoning district, meets the setback, meets the building height, meets the open space, review for the parking ordinance, the landscape and tree preservation ordinance, and the city's stormwater standards. They will have to submit, and there are some state, and Tim can go through those a little more, but there are state permits that are required, DEP, Army Corps of Engineers, those federal and state regulatory permits, those will have to be submitted and show that they have those approvals. We also consider any adverse impacts to sensitive environment related to wetlands or seagrass or protected habitat or species. And then we also look at site performance standards. This is mostly what the engineers are looking at, is the parking lot design, pedestrian safety, ingress, egress path points, and any type of impacts of adjacent property for noise, traffic, and odor. And then we also look at development standards in terms of building design and exterior lighting. So what you have before you today, and I'll turn it over to Sean, so he can present you the actual proposed boat storage building, but essentially, like I mentioned before, where it's being located, it's on a commercial, the future land use designation is commercial, zoning is C1M. This is a marina use, it's a permitted use in that zoning district. Currently, it's an office and boat storage building with an accessory dock, and they're proposed is this 160 slip boat storage and then a 28 slip dock. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sean.
Thank you. And here is the site plan with the overlay of the footprint of the building laid out across the site. You can see that the Wildell building is missing from that view because that building would come down. There's been a lot of talk in town about tripling the size of the building and this and that. Currently, all the structures on the existing site are a little over 11,000 to 12,000 square feet. This new building will be a little over 24,000 square feet, so it's just slightly over double. And in addition to that, the current site, all the stormwater, everything runs right into the ditch or right out into the balloon. This site, will meet or exceed the stormwater expectations with stormwater collected on site, outside and within the building. And we got the architectural elevations. The building height, it's 35 feet, for a usable space. There's a pitch of the roof, which brings it up to right about the height of the existing building that is there now. This building is approximately 210 feet long by 115 feet wide. And as our architect put together with the design, some of the features he has on there and design-wise, it helped breaks up that if it was just a plain metal building, it would look pretty overbearing, but with the work that he's done and the things that he's kind of added into this, it makes the structure a little bit more pleasing and to the eye, and also kind of brings some of the visualizations of it down. Current view from the middle of the dog park, looking north towards the existing dry storage building. And the next, another shot from and then kind of a proposed view. What you don't see in that shot is that there are some existing oak trees on the dog park site, which will, help mask that view, but that was just captured from the video. From Indian River Drive, looking towards the Waddell building, again, with the existing trees that are there, ones that will be planted on the site. It's still very blocked out. And I want to add that from the Indian River Drive to the front of the Waddell building was about 80, to the new building. The front of that building will be pushed back approximately 82 feet. So it'll be nearly 200 feet back from the road. Another live shot right there on Day Palm as you kind of head in towards Rio Vista and the yacht club and the marina. First the Waddell, and then another proposed view. That's looking south on Rio Vista, right about where the exit drive is from the marina. You can see kind of through the trees and a little bit straight down that line through towards the yacht club and the existing dry storage. And then with the building in there now. And a little bit of the water view looking west at the west side of the building, which where all the launch operations will take place. And back to the site plan with the data table and things like that in there. So as you can see, the site, is 1.3 acres, building size, 25,000 square feet. Building height's 35 feet, setbacks 25 foot front yard, which will be almost 200 feet back. There was a variance already granted from the prior ownership when they were looking to do some expansion to that property as well. And open space, we're right there, at open space.
Want me to talk about? Just so this is just some of a quick analysis on the traffic. The current use, the traffic generates about, and when they submit, they'll do a more specific destination or specific calculation of what the current traffic generation of the site is. But I estimate it would be around 231. The new site, based on the proposal, would be 453. Increase of 222 daily trips, but that does not require a more in-depth traffic study. The threshold for a traffic study for any project in the city or in the county is 400 trips per day. And basically, when you do those type of studies, that's looking for impacts to like intersections and turning lanes, and so the logic is that traffic under 400 trips is not going to generate where you need to look at impacts to intersections. In terms of the parking, 63 parking spaces are required. They are providing 23 on site, but overall the city marina, which is including the proposed storage building, 91 spaces will be required, and the site will have 98 parking spaces provided. And I think, Sean can talk about this more, but I think they're trying to balance saving the trees with trying to put more. They could put more parking on the site, but you would take out more trees.
Yes, absolutely. We've been very conscious in laying out the size of the building and the placement of the building and the existing trees that mask it, that fit into the neighborhood, that have the least impact, as we can. Kind of working it around with what's there.
Cindy Lawson, Finance Director. You thought the planning part was exciting, just wait. So, the one thing I did want to do was just to provide a little bit of historical context for this, although not going back to 1920. When we purchased the Lost Tree Village in 2007, the city did get a grant, but it only got a grant for 3 years. And so after that 3 years was over, the marina was left with about a $338,000 a year debt service burden. That left the marina in a position where it could cover the debt service annually, but there was really nothing left for any capital improvements to the marina itself, or really any breathing room. And by the end of 17-18, the marina was in a place where it had zero available net cash, unrestricted net cash. And so when we sold the electric utility, one of the things that we did with the proceeds from the sale was we paid off that debt. And I'm happy to report that as a result, in this most recent fiscal year, the marina is back to generating between $400,000 and $500,000 a year in net operating income, and has built itself back up to about an $800,000 cash reserve in just the short time since we did that. So that was very successful. But as we move forward with these projects, and I know we've talked about this at budget workshops, one of my primary goals is that we don't end up in the same place again, that we don't take on projects that either give the marina a debt service burden so big that that's all it can manage to do is pay the debt service, and then we also don't overlook depreciation. Depreciation is not a cash expense from an accounting standpoint. But I would submit to you that unless you are, from the time you build a project, setting aside money, maybe equal to that depreciation amount over time, then when you get to the end of the useful life of something, you're not sitting there with any cash to make repairs or replacements, or even to repair as you go. And so when I look at these projects, and I'm looking at them as we discussed, like one at a time, my goal is to make sure that we are covering debt service, we are covering depreciation as a proxy for the rate at which we're using up that asset, to make sure that we pulled ourselves out of a bad situation, we don't end up right back there again, because that's certainly not our goal. And the other thing I wanted to say is this analysis is at a very high level and very conservative, which I think is consistent with the fact that it's based on an opinion of probable cost at this point. But I do just want to walk you through it quickly and talk about some of the assumptions I've made, and why I feel comfortable that the project as proposed is financially sustainable in terms of all the things we just talked about. So if you look right now, the opinion of probable cost, and we'll just focus on the numbers out to the far right, is $7.6 million, 7618052. And below that, you'll see what we have proposed as the sources of funding for those expenses. So first of all, we have grants. We have an actual award of a grant for $381,000, and then we've made application for another grant. We're showing it here at $369,000. We have actually made application for an $800,000 plus grant, but again, we're being very conservative based on our last award. We're keeping it low, bringing the total grant funding for this project to about $750,000. The other two sources of funding for this project are a capital contribution from the general fund and an interfund loan. And I want to talk for a minute about the difference. Again, when we sold the electric utility, after we set aside some money to pay pensions and other post-employment benefit costs, we ended up with about $20 million that the council formally set aside in fund balance to be used for any future capital projects that the council wanted to appropriate them for. And so that $2 million represents money from that set aside. But I want to emphasize that is the only appropriation that has been made from that $20 million set aside to date for capital projects until the $1 million you just did for Jimmy Graves. But for the marina, only $2 million has been appropriated, and at this point, none of it's been spent. The interfund loan of $4.8 million is very much a loan. It will receive that same accounting treatment. The marina will be required to pay it back annually. But the benefit of taking money and loaning it to ourselves is that we can do it at low interest rates. We can avoid all the issuance costs associated with loans. And more importantly, if at some point in the future, the marina has a year that makes it difficult for it to pay debt service, the council would have the ability to give 1 year of debt service abatement or something that you would never get from a commercial loan. So that's the reason for the interfund loans. But make no mistake, they are loans, and there will be an expectation of repayment, and they will receive that treatment. And so what I'm calculating for the annual debt service, principal and interest, for that interfund loan of about $4.9 million, based on 1% interest rate, a 15-year amortization, is $351,102 per year, and that debt service would kick in in fiscal 23-24 after the project was complete. So the other thing I wanted to do, in keeping with making sure this project could afford its debt service, afford some depreciation, and any increase in operating costs, is we are already getting revenue from the dry storage, revenue of about $267,200 per year. Let me see if I can make this slide go forward. Yes. So that's part of the $470,000 a year in operating net income that we have. So I set that aside, and I'm looking at this project in terms of the additional revenue that the project will create. Can the additional revenue from this project cover debt service, cover additional operating costs, cover depreciation, and not in any appreciable way dip into that $470,000 we're getting every year, $400,000 to $470,000. So I want to emphasize that this is that differential calculation and not the whole revenue from the dry storage building. And I hope that makes sense. So let's look kind of down at the bottom. The additional revenue that's been projected is $711,000 a year. And so I have run some, again, very conservative numbers down at the bottom. The total cost of the capital project at $7.6 million I'm using an estimated average useful life of 25 years. Just looking at Sean's history, I mean, clearly some of that stuff will be there longer than 25 years, but also it's my understanding after talking with them today that they're putting in docks that may have a much longer useful life than the current wooden docks that we had. So that number may well be something more like 30 or 40 years, but again, I'm gonna go with 25 to make sure we don't lose sight of putting money aside, so very conservative. I'm showing basically a group of years, years 1 through 10, 11 through 15, 16 through 25, 26 through 30. How much debt service do we need to pay annually? What the additional operating costs might be, and that represents one more dry stack operator, and what the straight line depreciation would be, and the total then that would be required in additional revenue to cover those three things. And you can see in years 1 through 10, it's basically break even. Years 11 through 15, maybe it's upside down by 4,000. In the outer years, it's up by 342,000, and in years 26 through 30, we're up by like $636,000 a year. And across the entire life of the thing, more than enough extra revenue, in addition to enough money to completely replace that project at the end of its useful life. I want to say too that it's, again, I want to emphasize depreciation is not a cash expense, but I would like to discuss at this year's budget hearings that once this initial project goes forward, that we treat it like a cash expense and begin setting aside an amount, maybe not on a straight line. I mean, clearly the year after we build it, we're not going to have to do 300,000 worth of repairs on it, but in some fashion begin setting aside depreciation expense for each of these projects if they proceed in an R&R fund, so that as time goes on, we'll find ourselves with cash available for replacements and repairs. So with that, I'm, based on this very high level analysis, I'm comfortable that as proposed, this project is sustainable and it kind of meets my criteria of being supporting itself in all those different ways. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it back over to these guys.
Yes, Mayor, that's what we have. We're ready for council's discussion.
Let's, we've got people here. Let's go to the questions.
Okay.
Question and answer. At this point in time, we're going to open up the questions. I would only ask that we try to, for sake of time, that everybody gets their opportunity to ask what they want to know about it. That we pay attention as much as we can, and let's not repeat the same question over and over again if we don't have to.
Are we gonna have a chance to speak rather than ask questions?
We primarily would rather have questions, but we'll give you some chance to speak at some point in time if you like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. But again, I'm gonna watch the time limit only because you see the room with you.
Yeah,
We'll be here.
we've already gone through 45 minutes. Of what? Go ahead.
Sure, excuse me, but this is required by code.
Okay.
Okay? If you have a question, come up to the podium.
Okay.
I'll just be brief with this first question, Jay Jensen. For Cindy or whomever, I couldn't really see things that well up on the screen.
Can I get your name, please?
I'm sorry, Jay Jensen, Virginia Road. Am I to understand that the storage building, the new storage building, on its own merit and on the income solely from boats, the rental for boats, is enough to pay for itself? This wouldn't require.
Yes, but based on my analysis, it's enough to pay for itself in terms of the debt service that would be required, depreciation and operating costs.
Okay, thank you.
Leonard Markier. Just a simple question about need. I understand that there is an established need for remodeling or rebuilding of the existing rack storage building. And I know that one of the grant applications actually stated that the grants are based upon need, but you've actually requested the grant for the entire 140, 160 rack building based on need, and I'm wondering how have you established the fact that there's a need beyond the 53 rack building. Thank you.
Well, the boat market, as we have talked about here before, there's two other dry storage buildings adjacent to Indian River County. There's none in Indian River County. The boat storage building we have now has a capacity to store boats up to 22 feet. And this building will have the capacity to store boats of 35 feet, 30 feet. So the market that we see is that there's no competition within 20 miles either direction of our building, and our building is full with a waiting list of 20-foot boats, and we're gonna build a building that will accommodate boats of about 50% bigger than that.
I appreciate that. The way I am looking at it with respect is that what you're saying is that you have a want of additional rack storage, not a need. And so I'm just putting that on the table, that we have to establish that there is actually a need, and in Fort Pierce and in Sebastian, that everything is oversold or over rented and so forth. That's all. I'm just wondering if you have done a market study to establish need, and does that need translate into something that's legitimate for a grant application? Thank you.
Hi, Richard Othheimer, and before the discussion moves to sort of debate over need or wisdom or impacts, I just want to see if we can clarify a couple of things that were not entirely clear, in part because it's hard, tough to see the presentation. So going to the height of the building, you said that the height limit is 35 feet. I looked at what was posted online. It was tough to get the numbers to focus, but the building obviously has a peaked roof. And in the presentation, you said somewhat higher. So one, how high is the building actually at its highest point, and how does that relate to the code?
Jason, we're gonna let Jason pull that up, and then ask our architects to.
So the height, the way we measure height for non-residential buildings is it's the maximum height of the building can be to what is the eave of the structure. So I'm trying to get to one of these. So they are under the 35-foot height limit by being to the eave of this, to essentially where the roof starts. That's the eve.
I tried to read those numbers on the side. Are those?
That's
they ended up being 39.
They're 35. It's 35. Mine's correct. There's the architect.
What are the numbers?
So the numbers are measuring the vertical wall height of the base wall and the.
No, we can't read them.
Yeah, it's 35 feet.
What's that?
It's 35 feet.
The total is 35 feet to the eave.
To the eve.
And to the peak. So the top of the building is essentially about the same as what the existing boathouse is now, at about 49 feet. And you're allowed 15 foot of roof embellishment, and that's actually not usable space. But the
So what's the height?
Hold it. Hang on. Okay, the height limit is 35 feet to the eave, and you're allowed a 15-foot architectural embellishment by the code. All buildings.
And so you're up to 50 feet.
That is what the code requires.
But I just keep calling it 35 feet. So
35 feet to the eave. And then plus the 15-foot embellishment.
And the current building is at 49 feet, plus or minus a few inches, to the very top, right to the ridge. Yes, the current building.
So Jason, just to be sure, this building as proposed meets the height limit in the code of 35 feet plus the 15 foot of embellishment.
It will have to.
Yes.
But
The architect is saying
that's what
yes.
the code says.
And the dimension that the gentleman asked for is 49 feet, 8.5 inches.
I'm sorry, I had trouble reading it. I thought it was 49.
That's the existing building you're talking about.
No, that's
Okay.
to the highest point.
Yeah.
And I used to be saying the same, I didn't understand that, I'm trying to understand that with 35, so one question, at the Marine Commission meeting, and there wasn't any mention here, it said that the boats would enter and exit on the riverside, on the west side of the building. Is that, can somebody confirm that?
Yes, that's, yes.
Okay. Are the dimensions of the door on the east side the same as the dimensions of the door on the west side?
Yes,
So boats could fit in and out that door?
yes, that's primarily for emergency access, if we needed to get, you know, the forklift out for maintenance, or buy a new forklift, we can get the other one out and get it loaded on, transport and swapped out.
And you mentioned a variance, so you're actually, there was previously a variance in terms of the north setback, the 25 foot. There was a variance granted to a prior owner. Do you know when that was?
I believe the variance was granted in 2006 to the owner previous to the city purchasing, but variances run with the land, so that's already a granted variance.
One last question, I guess, on the variances. You're combined, the Waddell lot, right now, do you need to have a setback to the Waddell lot, or have you unified title of the two lots?
What we would propose to do, if the development goes through as planned, would be to abandon the Rio Vista right-of-way, and then the entire parcel would be from Indian River Drive east-west right-of-way line to the river.
That was my assumption, I just didn't know if it had happened yet, and that would need to happen, I think.
That will need to happen, yes, sir.
Okay. Will there be any, on the front of the Waddell, the front, will there be boat storage, sanding, painting, servicing at all on that property?
No, sir, no. Yeah, in all the day-to-day operations, that eastern door will be closed. You know, there won't be any forklift traffic in or out there unless there's some sort of emergency use to get us to go out there.
Okay.
And if the door is open at all, it'll probably only be open about 6 to 8 feet during the day, just to let some extra airflow.
And the trees, I know in the visual, the flyover, you're gonna have trees, but I assume the existing trees on the Waddell lot, the live oaks and all, do they all have to come, will they all come down?
No, no.
They're all staying?
Yes. So all the trees in the front of the property, there's majestic oaks there.
Yeah, you're
We
gonna,
intentionally saved all those so that we have less visual impact to the.
okay. I wasn't sure, developers like to clear cut, I wasn't sure if the trees were coming down and new trees were being planted, but you're preserving
No,
those trees. That's good.
And it's a pretty accurate depiction, as we saw from the photograph, and then the actual that we.
You can't hear.
I'm sorry, I hadn't had my mic on. So, if you can flip to the one visual,
Jason, will you flip to the visual of the photograph
Okay.
of the, looking at it from Indian River Drive East?
once we get this working.
The photograph looking from, John, you
From
want?
Indian River Drive, and then.
Down to the Waddell.
That one.
So we, when Hogan did this model, we did true depictions of the sizes of the trees that are out there now. So there's some beautiful oak trees, there's about 12 of them. And
Right.
so we're not taking any of those out up in the front of the property.
That's very good to hear, for your beautiful trees, and I can tell whether these were live oaks or, I'm sorry. I think those, I just wanted to clarify some facts, so I think that was helpful to do that, and I'm sure people have other comments, I may have other questions, but those were, I think, just, clarifying some of the facts on the ground.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Fran Hennig. It's Henig. My question is about the plan for the increase in pollution in the lagoon. It looks like the plan is going to increase both the number of boats and the size of the boats coming in to the marina, and I imagine it's gonna be a destination for people that aren't necessarily mooring there. And that's gonna impact our fragile ecosystem that we have with the lagoon. And I'm a little sad about it because 3 days ago, Governor DeSantis, I don't know if you saw this, increased by more than double the amount that he's putting towards the manatee rescue programs and habitat restoration. It's up to $30 million now. The manatees here in Florida, they were taken off the endangered species list in 2017. But I can't imagine that they're not going to end up back in there. I don't know if, I think we've all maybe seen, oh, the manatees are dying, you know, but I didn't realize the extent of it until I looked into it. Sorry?
They're all gonna be here all day long if everybody
Okay.
wants to speak.
So sorry.
Stay to the truth.
So anyway, the question is, what is the plan? What is the plan? I mean, the population has increased significantly over the past 4 years. I think there's an increase of 10% of population. And what happens, I think it's helpful if everybody understands. I know you're in a rush to get out of here. However, the manatees are dying at really unprecedented rates. And I know you don't.
Excuse me, ma'am. Please talk to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
But anyway, I mean, I have statistics on how much the increase. I think that this last year, between 10 and 15% of the manatee population died in Florida. This is why the governor increased the money that he's putting towards saving them. And when we're inviting more pollution into our fragile ecosystem, I think we need to have a plan for that.
I'm gonna let our consultant answer the
Okay.
questions about it. But you had a couple things I want to try to boil down so I don't lose them all. We're not building a place to attract anyone except boaters there. We're not building restaurants or other commercial uses. So it is a marina and a dry storage building. So we're not building other uses that would attract people to the marina. The other issue I'll let Tim talk about with the pollution.
Certainly. So just starting off with the stormwater system, redevelopment of older sites is great because the redevelopment site has to meet current water quality standards on treating the stormwater from the site. So there's actually going to be an improvement on both the Waddell parcel and the dry storage building parcel because currently all the stormwater is collected and it's sent to the lagoon as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. What we're going to provide is a dry stormwater pond that will collect the first inch of rainfall, and it's going to treat the stormwater to remove the nitrogen and the phosphorus. So you will see an improvement of stormwater from this project. On your other concern about the manatees, there's a county-specific manatee protection plan. In that plan, it breaks up the lagoon into different zones. The marina is within Zone 6, and from the plan, it notes that the portion of Zone 6 lying within the city of Vero Beach is conducive to the expansion of existing boating facilities. Furthermore, natural resource constraints, including the presence of seagrasses and shoreline vegetation, are minimal. Due to a lack of natural resource constraints and proposed expansion plans, a maximum shoreline density ratio should not be applied to the portion of Zone 6. So it's really, if you're going to expand a marina anywhere in Indian River County, this is an ideal location for that. So now, any technical literature that I've read about the lagoon, it does not point to well-run marinas as being significant sources of pollution. What's good about the city owning and operating this marina is the citizens can ensure that it's run well. So I think that's another benefit. Also, with the literature I've read, the majority of the impacts of the lagoon are caused by stormwater runoff and the septic tanks. So, this project should not impact natural resources. And one last point, I'm sorry. We gathered a benthic resource survey. So we mapped seagrasses, oyster bed, mangrove habitat, and we avoided any natural resources that are in the lagoon. So again, this project really should not cause adverse impacts as long as it's a well-run well.
Well, that's good to hear, but what about the boats themselves? The boats that are, don't they leak their pollution into, I mean, we're getting more boats. We're getting more boats and bigger boats.
This marina will have, in its design, it will have new pump out systems for all the docks, as proposed. And we currently have a pump out system now where we have a pump out boat that does it, but we'll have remote access at each of the docks here at the bulkhead, and then later on at each individual dock as we move forward.
Okay, and do you have those studies that we could see? I went around the website, I didn't see, this stuff went up today. Is it possible to see what you're referring to when you say that you haven't?
The county's manatee plan, Sean, or Tim?
Yeah, can we post links to that on the?
We can post that. We can post a link to that on our website.
Is that a recent study?
So I'm referring to the Manatee Protection Plan, the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Plan, and the state's BMAP program. Those three documents, which I believe the city can post a link to on the website.
Okay, you don't know the year that,
2004.
2004, 18 years ago.
2016 and 2021.
Yeah. See, we all know it's 2004. That's why we're concerned, but I do appreciate it, and thank you for your time. Sorry? Oh. 2021, did you say you have, what's 2021 and what's 2020?
There were three different studies, the Manatee Protection Plan,
I
believe
see.
2004, the Indian River Lagoon document is, I believe, 2016, and then the BMAP is 2021.
Okay, and then will you post them on your website? Thank you. That would help.
So did you write this down? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
This ties into Mr. Planner. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. But this whole thing seems to be pretty intuitive, I think. And one of the things that I feel that's so intuitive is that we have a culture here in the city that we're not maintaining as a result of us expanding into a very fragile estuary. So my question is, there are different precautions or different things, previous things that you could do before proceeding into a plan of such magnitude. This is a question for everybody, but basically I spoke to the Fish and Wildlife Department and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department, and specifically an individual who told me that there's a certain pre-application plan. Have we done the pre-application plan prior to moving forward with anything?
Yeah, we have permits from Army Corps and DEP to construct the dry storage building dockage. We do not have a permit from the Water Management District for the stormwater system, which is very standard. You just demonstrate the 1-inch water quality calculations I mentioned, and the very straightforward application process.
So I'll ask the question one more time. Have you applied or called the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to find out if there's a pre-application prior to you submitting for permitting with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers? It's a circumvent method to figure out whether or not this is a viable solution prior to proceeding. And it was actually told to me it was a typical process. So I just wonder if you called the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to see if there's anything in this area here which may be of a concern.
So it's common to hold a pre-application meeting with DEP and with the Army Corps, who are the regulatory groups who will authorize this project. We've held, I believe, 3 pre-application meetings with them.
You're not answering the question. Have you contacted, very straightforward, Mr. Manager, have you contacted the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to see if there's a pre-application program or plan that you could proceed in prior to putting this whole thing together? Yes or no? That's
Tim,
yes
let me
or no.
just ask you a question. Is U.S. Fish and Wildlife a permitting agency for this project?
No, we do not need a permit from
Okay.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Let me finish.
Yes.
Thank you. We can reach out to U.S. Fish and Wildlife and see if they have any suggestions for us as we move through the process.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Excuse me, it's not a suggestion, it's an actual procedure, Mr. Manager. And really, it's a very simple and typical thing. And a manager of a city should actually hold those reins, I would think, to call someone, in this case.
Mr. Pridgeon, I think I tried to answer your question honestly. You asked us if we talked to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We acknowledge that we haven't because they are not a permitting agency for this project. We agreed to go further to do that.
That's not true. They will get the final say. Actually, they get handed over to them after the Army Corps of Engineers, of course, does their study. It's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife who gets involved with this. And they take a look and survey the area in which you guys are looking. No one knows about this, isn't this? I gotta look. This is intuitive stuff, guys. Very intuitive. So the answer is no.
The answer
Excuse
is,
me, I have a phone number. His name is Scott Callis, and I'm sorry, this is such a ridiculous project. But anyway, Scott Callison, Fish and Wildlife Biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Anybody want to take the number down? The number is 904.
Mr. Pridgeon,
731.
if you'll be so kind as to email that to me,
Oh, yes.
I'll call him myself.
And I'll wait for your response. I appreciate it.
And I made a promise that we would talk to U.S. Fish and Wildlife, but I want to reiterate, they're not one of the overarching permitting agencies.
Yes, they are. That's what I was saying.
Let me finish. As you mentioned, they work through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
No, they actually get handed the file after the U.S.
That's
Army Corps of
what
Engineers.
That's what I was trying to say, that you brought up, they get it from the U.S. Army Corps.
They don't work in conjunction with. They're a separate agency that actually could have taken a look and surveyed the area before you spent over how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money on a project that may not even be approved based on what's happening today. And someone alluded to a $30 million injection. How is this working in conjunction with a manatee preservation project that is, our whole state is?
We're going to look into it, sir.
Well, the look into it is passed. You guys, this is, and the 2006 Manatee Protection Program can be also altered as well.
Thank you, sir.
My name is James Shea. I live at 3526 Mockingbird Drive. I'd like to try to stay on the topic, which is the storage building. And if anybody has driven around the part of Central Beach between Beachland and the top of, well, I guess it's Live Oak or Indian River Drive, and out to A1A, you've seen hundreds of lawns with signs that are objecting to this project. The principal objection that I have is that the boat barn is going to be massive. And what we're looking at is an enterprise that's going to make supposedly $350,000 or $450,000 a year to support the marina. And I think we should support the marina, but I don't think we should have a giant commercial enterprise right in our neighborhood. And I'm sure there are a lot of people in this room. I don't know if you usually get this many people at a workshop like this, but we probably have 20 or 30 people here that live in our neighborhood that are objecting to the idea of having this massive building. When it comes out to all the hedging about the heights and the waivers and things like that, it looks like it's going to be as tall as Vero Towers, which is right next door. And which somebody here said was in violation of whatever it was. And
it's going to be the same height as the original building.
Yeah, it's too big for our neighborhood. We don't need it. And Jason mentioned that they couldn't put it down at the 3 corners or 2 corners because there weren't going to be storage there. Where are they going to store the boats for the sailing club? Why don't they just build it down there next to where the sailing club's going to be, or where they are now, and build it there and keep it out of our neighborhood? it's too big. It's a land grab that's been going on all around Central Beach. And I'd just like to know how many people here are opposed to the building of the storage barn. So, we vote. And this situation we have here is similar to what's going to happen with voting on the three corners. We're not going to vote in favor of the three corners until we know what's going to be built there exactly. The city commission should come up with a presentation prior to the ballot in November to tell us exactly what's going to happen so that you can't change the stuff after the fact. And that's what's basically been going on here. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Let's please hold the applause so we can get everybody get an opportunity to get up here and speak. We have a lot of people who want to speak. Thank you.
I want to say good morning, but it is evening. Can't tell. I've been here many mornings. Good evening, Council. Leslie Tilley from Rio Vista Boulevard. I want to get back to the question that was asked about the Manatee Protection Plan, 2004. I would like to ask, and I know many in my supporters and people in the neighborhood would like to ask you all to slow down this project, wait, and really look at the Manatee Protection Plan, because as this gentleman just said, there are other places massive building on this scale can go, not on this small residential neighborhood street. And the Manatee Protection Plan is probably out of date. And I intuitively know this probably, and I think it's one of the biggest things you're hanging your hat on as far as we can build there because it says. It's been 16 years, we've had massive hundreds of deaths. We've had seagrass death, and we've had death by starvation of thousands and thousands of manatees since the protection plan went into place. So I would like to ask that you look at the Manatee Protection Plan. I know it's in the Indian River County program, but things have changed, and our power plant is closed, and the zoning over there, I think it's zone 9, is based on protecting that precious population of manatees that were there for years, and many of us could go watch them, and they're not there now. I can pretty well guarantee you the warm water's not there. The zone was made to make less boat density because the manatees were there. Things have changed, and Three Corners might be an excellent place for a beautiful on this scale building on that size lot. And this building is, the way it's shown here in this drawing, it's much more deceptive. If you stand over in the baseball field and you really look at the space and how massive this is, it's very deceptive. So we don't need a building of this size, and I think that there's a way we can work this out. We love the marina, and also so many of us have been waiting over 5 years for repairs, and the marina itself has a lot of people crawling all over it. And there are people from the mooring field, people that live at the docks. I know many of you here, and it is a liability. When you walk down the South Dock, it's a liability. Excuse me?
30 seconds. Forgot to keep on
Didn't
time.
know you were timing me. Okay.
Keep on time.
So I'm going to ask you, it's a question, it's a statement. Please slow down and look at that. There's a lot going on here, and the footprint, you build that thing, it's not good for our neighborhood, and it's way too big. And there is a proper place for it. And I think it could be exciting too. So please, let's try to protect the manatees, and try to protect ourselves too and our investments. You know, we've paid a lot of money. Thank you.
Very quickly, my name is Chris Vick. I live in the Central Beach area. I have a business in the city of Vero Beach. I am a customer of the yacht club. Not the yacht club, the dry storage. There is a need. I bought a much smaller boat than what I would have liked to have had to be able to simply fit in there. It does have a T-top, so I'm all the way at the top. So the need is, every time I go there to use my boat, I have parts of the roof in my boat that I have to pick out of that boat before I can go use it. But my question is, you know, as you can tell, I'm in support of the marina expansion to its full extent. If there are so many environmental activists here today that live in the Central Beach area that are so concerned by the environment, why do we only have 35% of those people who have actually stepped up to the plate and put their money where their mouth is and done a step system on their home? Because I am here to say, I believe that boats put out less pollution than dogs defecating and urinating on the dog park. And then the leaky septic systems that are so old. If y'all want to protect the lagoon, get a step system.
Before you speak, can you clarify this question and answer, or is this our 1 3-minute time to speak?
We would prefer questions so we can get the details and the
So
facts
I
out.
can come back because I have more to say, but I just had 2 questions, just so the public could hear. I'm Karen Marcel. I live on Indian River Drive. Been there since 1988. And the main question we keep hearing is why phase 1 does not include fixing the marina, the falling docks, everything that's dilapidated. That was the first plan. So that's number 1. And number 2, was there a market study on the dry storage building? And if there is a need, because there isn't one in Indian River County, because most people want to be near an inlet. So was there a market study to confirm that we won't have this big building there sitting half empty? So those are the 2 questions I'll come back.
I'll just answer part of your question there as a boater. Okay, that most of the boats that are going into this dry storage are not looking for the inlet. Those are big fishing boats, 45, 50-foot boats. 30-foot boats can go out in the inlet. These 22, 23-foot boats are not normally, I'm not saying they can't, aren't normally looking for inlet. They're looking to run along the river.
30 to 35-foot boats is what you
30
said.
foot is what we were told, 30, yeah.
I thought tonight they said 35.
Depending on how we place the boats in those racks, we probably could squeak out, much like we're getting the 22-foot boats. I mean, that building was originally built probably for like 19 to 20. But we can accommodate some 22-foot boats, but we are very strategic in our operations on where we place them. Put a 22-foot boat on the south side of the building. We're gonna have a 20-foot boat on the north side, so we can still operate the forklift and maneuver. So
But we're
that's
talking
where
about
that
T-top
slight
boats.
increase.
T-top style boats, not big cabin boats.
Yes.
Thank you.
So you're saying we can fit 35-foot boats in this building?
Maxed out at 35, yeah. Like I said, it's just gonna be strategic placement of how we place them in the racks.
And then my
Not,
second question?
yeah, it's not gonna be 160 35 foot, it's gonna be a variety.
And then the first question was, why is phase 1 not fixing the marina?
We answered this. Phase 1 was selected because the need of the boat storage building was greater because of the condition of the building. We wanted to do it first to have a safe building there.
It's not
So it's more important than the docks?
Well, if you look at the condition of the dry storage building, it demanded that it be in the first phase. The reason we're not doing the others is we'll do those as we get permits and we can show some success in having this one done, get that revenue flowing, and then do the next phase next, which we would propose the next phase would be the reconstruction of the docks where the marina proper is, those 3 docks, the north dock, the south dock, and the field dock.
And I'd just like to add, the 3 main marina docks have always been under city control. So there's been that ongoing constant maintenance. The south complex has gone through, now we're the 3rd owner. So it's fair to say, as each owner was kind of looking to sell, they were probably weighing their options on doing some rehabilitation or selling it.
And the north docks that are in the lagoon that are falling apart?
All the docks at the marina, are well beyond their, built life expectancy.
When you say the north dock in the boat basin lagoon?
Yeah.
I believe it was around $5,000 worth of repairs were done back in 2019. So there was immediate needs based on some work or some surveying that was done back then that it needed that. And then that work was finished up right when I came on board 3 years ago.
And then the market study?
I think that was already answered earlier by our city manager.
We haven't done a formal market study.
Thank you.
Since the last Marine Commission meeting when we had 22 votes on the waiting list, since then, our waiting list to get into our current building with a max size boat of 22 feet jumped to just over 30. We have not started a waiting list for the current building because we don't want to give people false hopes because we're not that far down the road on this. Once we get a little bit further down the road and we have some pretty assurances on some dates when things are really going to start happening, yes, we will open up a list. And I have no doubt that building will be filled up right away.
Hello, Mark Erker, Community Link. I just had a quick question, Adam, on the cases. I presume you're in all three volume cases. In the max case, which you showed the numbers for, carried a, the OpEx, CapEx, and replacement value and all that. I'm just curious, did the other cases, were they economic as well?
I'm not sure what other cases that we're talking about. We did, when we did it last year, when we talked about at the budget workshop last year, when we talked about the lowest size building, the medium sized building, and the high. Yes, because the debt service sort of scales up and down at the same pace as the revenue. So yeah, essentially they do. Okay.
Thank you.
Mark Muture, Indian Lilac Road for 30 years, and when I moved here 36 years ago, I was on the top floor of Vero Towers. So I'm very familiar with this, and also I'll give you a little background. At the time that the city decided to buy this, it was, and I share in perpetuity, and of course, we took $3.5 million or so, plus or minus, of the FPL money and made the Marina from a loser into a winner. And I just hope that doesn't happen again, like she said. Is your economic viability of this thing based on 100% occupancy of the new building, or what percent occupancy is it based on?
It is based on the maximum annual revenue, but what it doesn't have in it is any escalation for CPI or any of that. And again, it's based on straight line depreciation, very, very simplistic analysis.
Okay, but I don't think assuming 100% occupancy from day one is very conservative.
No, but assuming no increases for CPI for 30 years is. So they kind of sort of offset each other a little bit. And again, I'm looking at the broad strokes. I think the real swing in the numbers is how, because depreciation isn't a cash expense, that's $350,000 a year, how much of that we decide to put aside in R&R, and we can certainly do that more slowly at the beginning and then ramp that number up. So it tilts everything a little bit this way. So again, without going real deeply into an analysis, because it is just an opinion of probable cost, I hear what you're saying, but they're sort of offsetting things for that.
Okay,
for that
like I say, I share your concern that this is sustainable, and I certainly hope it is. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Lori Vero, and I live in Central Beach, and we do own a boat, and so we are for the marina, but I'm not for this large expansion. I'm wondering, is this already a done deal? We know that the master plan that was approved in 2019 shows a different size of building than the one we are now seeing pictures of.
Nothing has been voted on by this council to spend any money yet. The exception of the plan itself.
And so tonight we have this workshop. I'm just wondering, what do we get to, how does our voice matter?
That's why we're having the workshop. Listen. But there's also a lot of other voices in the form of emails and different stuff that's come in too, so we'll take all that into consideration all the way through.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, do you feel that this fits when you think about the art museum, the Riverside Theater, the area that it's being built? as boat owners, we've been down to Fort Pierce and a boat shed, and there's a very different feel. It's not in a neighborhood, but this one is in a neighborhood. So I know this is a feeling question. It's not a fact, but feelings are a part of a decision. And so I'm wondering, as you, City Council, think about the Vero Beach that people come to, do you feel that this is considering a Vero Beach that is not trying to expand and give itself away?
I think what the conceptual plan does is plans for the future. This is not gonna be something that's gonna be done in the next 15 years. Okay, that's a 20-plus year plan, the conceptual plan. That's all it was a conceptual plan. Every phase of that plan will have to come back before this council, P&Z, and so forth, to be voted on, with all kinds of public input every step of the way. So it was a conceptual plan that was done back when there was consideration for leasing the marina out to a private company. Folks said loud and clear they didn't want that to happen, so it didn't happen. We went out and hired a marina manager with a commitment to improve our marina from standards. And so we looked at this, but from day one, if you go back and look at the minutes of August 2019, I said then it's a 20-plus year plan. It's not something that's gonna happen in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna happen unless there's a demand for it.
Yeah.
Right, it's not just build it and they will come. It's gonna be, we'll adjust to the demand. Again, we have 30 boats right now on a waiting list, and that's at 22 foot and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the larger size boats, we won't put them on the waiting list right now.
We have applications for right around 250 people wanting to get into the city marina collectively, dry storage.
So I'm 46 years old, or almost. I bought my house in 2014, and I bought it considering Vero is what it is, and it's changing, and I imagine I would still own my house in 20 years. And I have boys, they're growing up, and they love the water. So I do think that when you go to other cities, Jupiter, Fort Pierce, everyone can say, oh, 20 years ago it was more like Vero Beach. So it is changing.
Thank you.
I'm Marion Farabee, and I live in Central Beach. My father built the house in 1968. It was a long time ago. I've been here a long time. Our family, he was a member of the Vero Beach Yacht Club, and we had a water life up in Michigan. I've been around boats all my life. And I have, first of all, my top thing is, why is Vero Beach, our government, in the business of providing a storage unit for people's toys? That's the bottom line, what it is. I have not seen, in all the places I've been, and as I said, dealing with boating all my life, to have something like this, you know, that in the government providing storage for these things. Right now, Vero Beach is dealing with storage units in the town, because for people's other toys, their cars in there. And are we going to need something for our the little what are the things we run around in, the golf carts that we have, you know, and all these other things that people buy? I mean, this is crazy to have to worry about whether people, especially, you're not talking about the traffic going in and out, back and forth around that area. As I say, I've watched this change in many ways. Aside from the fact, at least you've eased my mind only on one thing, and that's that you're leaving the trees. You know, this Riverside Park area, with her talking about this, the people have mentioned to us, I go to the local church, we have people come to the church from boatings and stuff, and they talk about the special way Vero Beach is. But it's not going to be with this monster building there. You've already taken that land and built the other monster building, which we don't even talk about how many trees were yanked out of there, and the fact that it was built for rowboats. I mean, don't you think this is enough? This is crazy. We're gonna have one for rowboats, and then we're gonna have one for sailboats, and then we're gonna have another one for these little boats. I mean, and then what are you gonna do when the big diesel boats wanna be done? You're gonna start, messing with the islands, because maybe we ought to, have more room. I think this is crazy for you to be involved in this kind of stuff. So that's my feelings about it in general. But I think if you're gonna do it at all, you better really slow down, because I don't think people, you're just, it's like you're excited about maybe we can make a little bit of money this way. But I don't feel like that's your job.
Thank you.
I'm Judy Orcutt. I'm here representing the Clean Water Coalition. And the Clean Water Coalition wrote a letter to the City Council and kind of laid out our ideas about the marina improvement, modernization, the good parts and the bad parts. I was going to read it, but it's way too long for this group. So I'm going to try to just hit the points that haven't been hit in the presentation. I'm really happy, Cindy, to hear that you verified that any size dry storage building is financially feasible. So it could scale up and down, so the council could choose to do any side. That should make a lot of these people really happy. I've always been kind of amused by the fact that we're only talking about phase one here. We're just doing phase one, and now I'm seeing that 40 of the parking spaces are being accommodated somewhere else, not in phase one. So that's just, it's like how it's been sort of trickled. It's just tricky to conceptualize the whole thing as just phase one, because it's kind of like phase one leads to phase two, leads to phase three. But anyway, that is true, isn't that right, Tim? Did I understand that correctly? That the dry storage building requires 63 spaces and only 23 are being accommodated in phase one?
That's correct. As we've mentioned, we did that, so we didn't jam all the parking spaces in there, so we didn't have to take the trees down and to provide for the stormwater.
Right.
We have a bifurcated site.
Right.
Our marina operation is really one operation over there. We have the yacht club, our great neighbor between us.
Right.
But we function as one site. So we have enough parking with the two sites to satisfy
current parking, like to satisfy the two sites.
That's correct.
Not that you're gonna have to pave additional parking elsewhere.
Current parking, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, it's already existing. Once we complete phase one, with the parking on phase one and the marina itself, it's there now. There's enough parking to take care of the phase one development.
Are you comfortable? Okay.
It'll meet the code.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm obsessed about the parking, as you know, is because of stormwater runoff. Anytime you pave, you're creating additional runoff, which if it's paved parking, we have gas and oil and so forth running off and going into the lagoon. So then it becomes a water quality issue. So that's why
But we're actually putting in a stormwater plan.
Yeah, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen specifics.
Well, we're not to that point yet.
Okay.
As you know, we're here at a conceptual level.
Right.
Before we develop final plans, we want to know what it is that final plan's going to be for.
Okay.
But that final plan will meet all the stormwater requirements of the city of Vero Beach and the St. Johns River Water Management.
It's a code, so it'll have to be put in.
Right, but. Correct.
It's a non-conforming site. It does not currently meet the city's current stormwater requirements. But since it's a redevelopment of site, it has to meet those requirements.
Right, okay.
And it is shown, they conceptually do show on their plan where they would put the stormwater, but they'll have to do all the final calculations to size it.
Correct, to size it correctly.
To size it correctly to meet the city standards.
Right.
And, sorry to move you. I'm sorry, I didn't repeat. they're showing it on the stormwater. The engineers, before they finalize the site plan, will have to do all the stormwater calculations. That'll be that is part of the required documentation, and it has to be presented to city staff, reviewed by the city's engineers. And the site does not currently meet the stormwater requirements, but it will meet the city's, and it will be required to meet the city's current stormwater requirements once it's developed.
Thank you.
So it's improving the stormwater.
And the stormwater requirements, as I heard mentioned, was to hold 1 inch rainwater.
Yes, and the idea of that is, like you're saying, with the vehicles, they drop the oil, gasoline, there's dog fecal matter in the ground, there's things we spray on our lawns. What we want to do is when the first inch of rain hits, you get sheet flow, it picks up all those nasties, and we want to treat those in the stormwater systems before they hit the lagoon. So it's very important to get that initial flush, that initial 1 inch. So again, redevelopment of sites is awesome. That's exactly what we want to see, is redevelopment of these sites that are older than 1980.
And using low impact development and so forth. I know all that's the right thing to do. I've heard 1 to 2 inches though. 1 inch doesn't sound very,
again, I want to emphasize that this site, just like any other site developed in the city, will meet the requirements that the city has in place, and the St. Johns River requirements is also.
Okay. So a couple of the other things that we brought up in our letter to the council, one was to have a washdown area at the dry storage facility that would capture all the detergents and everything that wash off of the boats and filter that. Is that part of the plan? It wasn't mentioned.
Yes, basically on the west side of the building, the operations deck, we can talk, where we launch the boats and all that stuff, we'll have some outside, racks. We've been having discussions, we'll probably have that deck graded ever so slightly back towards the building, with probably like a French drain right in the doors, little planters kind of right on so that'll be directed either inside to a containment basin inside underneath one of the rack piers, or possibly directed to, we got on the north and south at the seawall some landscape areas we're going to put, either directed into those.
Because I think don't car washes have to do that too?
I'm not familiar with car washes.
I think they're car washes.
My truck doesn't have, speaking of car washes, previous meeting.
We're just illustrating, but yeah, sorry.
Car washes.
Car washes are required to do that, and there's probably a similar requirement, I think, for marinas also.
Okay, and the final thing that we brought up in our letter to the council was the whole issue of the muck dredging. And so that has been proposed. I don't know how much depth we want to get into it here, but we had, jumping in again. We just had concerns about how the muck is going to be handled, where it's going to be dewatered, is there going to be nutrient runoff back into the water? Is there going to be sufficient slope so that the muck doesn't just slump into the dredged area? I know it's probably a long and boring or tedious conversation, but it's important.
Are you calling me boring? So, those are all kind of preliminary final design details. We're not that far yet, but yes, obviously, if we dredge an area and it fills back in with muck, then I'm going to have very unhappy clients. So we will make sure that the side slopes are adequate. We also spoke with Dr. Treffry, which I have a very hard time pronouncing his last name, but he's here. He's here.
He's here on the front row.
Well, then I'm going to identify that he's a muck expert in the Indian River Lagoons. I think he'll agree with that. And he pointed out that some of the projects in Brevard County are dredging 500,000 cubic yards, and on phase one, the order of magnitude is 5,000. So very small, minor amount of dredging, and he made the comment at some point that no matter what type of dredging, whether mechanical or hydraulic, when it's such a small amount of dredging, as long as you follow best management practices, there should not be kind of any impact to the Indian River Lagoon, whether it's not going to be a positive, it's really not going to be a negative, it's such a small amount. Does that sound right? Okay.
And so do we have a dewatering site selected yet? Or are you reaching out to define folks the way we suggested to see if that site is available?
There are challenges with the fine site. It's about 10 miles to the north.
Yes.
It would be very challenging and expensive to do some kind of direct pipe for only 5,000 cubic yards.
Oh, but you're already putting it into a barge, a self-contained barge.
Right, so you'd be handling it multiple times. The cost would be extremely high to put it at the fine site. I would expect the city would need approval from the Florida Inland Navigation District fine, and then they would also need to remove that material once it dries out. So there's gonna be at least 3 different handling of the material from the contractor.
So then what is your intent to do with the dredge material?
For this small amount, it would be possible to let the water leave the material on site, basically berm around the site and let the water.
What site?
Whoa. Wait a second.
Where?
Where it could be on the actual dry storage building site.
What? There's poison in that milk. Dr. Treffer, you know that. Speak up, man.
Those are my questions.
Speak
I
up,
think
Dr.
it's,
Treffer.
I think it's safe to say, and you bring us some good points, Judy, that we haven't made a final decision on the muck material. We're doing some evaluations, and we'll bring those back when we do our final site plan and go forward. Go ahead.
So just to be sure I have the process correct, so the final site plan, after this meeting, you're gonna make a decision about the size of the building or whatever, and then do a final site plan, and then does that come back for a, where does the public have an opportunity?
That goes to
have
the
input?
Planning and Zoning Commission, which will be a public hearing at that point.
So, okay, so council will make a decision, and then it goes to planning and zoning.
Council, at some point, will give us a decision on what size building they
Right.
hopefully want to build.
Sure.
And then we'll develop the plans based on that.
Right.
And then it will go through the process just like any other site plan that comes to the city.
Okay, so the next opportunity for the public to provide input would be at planning and zoning.
Unless
Sounds
council directs us to have another meeting.
One thing that really should have a little bit of attention here is the fact that with the Army Corps of Engineers, there's a lot of permitting that has to be required, and that's all going to be coming about. It's all part of the process. Thank you.
I have a question about stormwater. Oh, hi, Linda Moore.
Linda.
I live in Vero, downtown. Okay, what was I saying? Okay, stormwater. So, is there a way, instead of paving these lots, in St. Lucie County, there's permeable surfaces that are approved for parking lots? And since the city owns this structure, and with the new stormwater utility tax, we'll have to pay that tax based on how much land is paved that is impermeable. Wouldn't it be better to have parking where we weren't paving it with asphalt? Wouldn't it be better? They're doing it in other counties. Is there anything on the horizon that could possibly be approved in this county before this?
We can take a look during final design of different surfacing types, but permeable pavers are not completely permeable.
The ones that they have at the college and Fort Pierce?
Wherever they are.
Okay.
You have to prepare the base and compact the base. And
So
when you
there's,
compact
what
the
about
base,
that permeable concrete? Is that still, that's not a thing either? I've been reading a lot about parking.
Well, you can get some permeable concrete and you can hold up the blocks and you can pour water straight through it. And that's the example they all give you. They don't show you that you have to put it on compacted base, which is a 98% density, which is basically impermeable itself.
I see. So there's, so are you saying from the engineer guys, there's not a good solution yet?
Well, everything helps.
Okay. All right.
However, I did want to say that that wouldn't help them with the stormwater utility tax, because they, as is currently conceived, would have to retain like a 100-year storm event, 24 hours, no discharge from the site. That's a
No, but I
hugely different
mean,
thing than
the math
permeable
for the things based on how much area is paved.
Right, but I don't think
That's the math.
I don't think permeable those kinds of pavers would meet the mitigation requirement, but I do want to say the stormwater utility assessment that would be paid by the marina would be paid by the marina out of marina revenues, not out of city taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, well, but I mean, okay, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but if you have a grass parking lot, it's not approved, you can't park on grass, it's illegal to park on grass, I don't get it. But grass, you wouldn't get charged that stormwater tax on the area of your grass.
Also, I would say.
Really? Oh, I thought it was just on your paved area.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, they're a commercial site, you're right, it would change the calculation of their impervious area. But it wouldn't get them a mitigation, it wouldn't
But
get them
also,
a mitigation.
I just want to say, grass parking under our code is not, you have to have a approved surface by the code and what's approved by the city engineer. And also, I think grass parking, we allow it in what are called public assembly uses, overflow parking.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's additional parking, where it's used intermittently, where it doesn't get compacted down and then becomes, it's no longer grass.
Fair enough, all right, okay, but you got me, right, the math is different.
The map is different once they
Right.
complete this development.
All right, okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Leonard Mark here. This has been a very informative workshop. I have probably two questions. First question is a simple one. When Coastal Tech submitted their draft proposal that had small, medium, and large, or deluxe, as some people call it, they also had a page that said, when you approve these three concepts or identify revisions deemed warranted, the next thing was to invite public comment for consideration upon the approved concepts. Did we do that?
Yes.
Can you tell me what the date was?
It was August of 2019 was the city council meeting when this plan was approved.
And that was public, that was
The public meeting, right?
that was the public comment portion of it.
Marine Master Plan was May 30, 2019. City Council March 17, 2020, and the final City Council was July 16, 2021.
Thank you. And the second thing that I had was listening to the conversations now about the need for the work to be done. And you said that phase one was predicated upon the fact that the existing rack storage building is really in dilapidated condition and needs to be rebuilt. And that makes a lot of sense. And combining that with the existing marina, which is in dilapidated condition and needs to be rebuilt, which was the original premise for this entire thing, everybody at least understood that. I'm just wondering whether or not the city council can decide to use as phase one, rebuilding the existing marina and the existing rack storage building in increments, because from what I understand, the rack storage building is built in 30-foot increments. So if we built one or two of them and we took care of all of the dilapidated structures for the marina in phase one, then we can talk about expansion. But go ahead, that was a question.
As I understand it, the racks are in 30-foot increments. You know,
yes,
if you
okay.
build a building, as you know, as being an architect and a
Yep.
contractor,
Yep.
and complete it, and then move a wall, it's gonna be more expensive when you get to the ultimate size of the building.
I know it is, but we're talking about actually being able to take care of all of the dilapidated construction, all of the dilapidated marina in phase one. Now we can talk about necessary expansion, desired expansion for additional use, expanded use. So I'm just asking whether or not at this point, when you were talking about the city council making a determination about the exact size, whether that's one of the things that you can factor into it and say, let's take care of everything dilapidated, phase one, and then move on from there and try to convince the community that you want to go bigger.
One of the things to consider, if we did that,
Yep.
in a perfect world, if we're building a new marina, that's the way you would do it. But we're trying to keep some revenue generation going at the marina. So if you do phase one, take it out of service and do that, you still got revenue generation from the others. So.
Well, okay, so devil's advocate, if you don't mind. Even if you shut down the marina for a period of time because you were going to be, or phased it down and phased it back up for a period of time, we still have some money left over from Florida Power and Light that we could use as a gift to the marina to tide them over for that period of time. But also, we want to make sure that it's phased so that people who are there at the docks now are not lost. In any case, I'm asking you to consider that because I think that would make sense. And I think it would diffuse an awful lot of the tension that's here and a whole lot of people that are really unhappy about the expansion. So that's why I'm going to ask you to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
Good evening, Council. My name is Omar Rodriguez. I'm one of three and only three large vessels in that marina. I have a 53-foot half-mast. Why is there only three? Because there can't be any more. Why is it can't be any more? Because we don't have the space for it. Okay. I want to talk a little later, but I've been in this neighborhood for about 4 months. I hope you've heard from very, very smart people here today. Very impressive resumes. I don't have that big resume. I just own an insurance agency. Every time I walk through those docks, I'm thinking about lawsuit. Lawsuit hasn't happened yet. Maybe next month. The question is, how can you afford not to? Okay. Yes. I ride my bike and I walk my dog in the same neighborhood these folks enjoy every day. Okay? All the folks that complain about noise, guess what? There's the same folks I see with their little chairs bringing to the Yak Club when they're doing the concert series. And you can hear at the Riverside Theater because it's so loud. They don't tell you about that. Okay? The folks that talk about the need about the marina, 25-mile radius around the city of Vero Beach, there's not a single place for a boat or an RV. How do I know? I own both. How they don't know? Because they park theirs in their house. Okay? So the folks talk about that this is for a few. This is not for the few. This is not a marina of the city of Vero Beach on the east side of the bridge. This is the city of Vero Beach for the entire city. There's hundreds of people out there who want to buy big boats. They want to buy a boat. They don't do it because they don't have a place to keep it. There's no storage capacity. Okay? Whether you want to expand this marina, we're talking about a storage building. This storage building is going to be less than half the size of the current one right now. Nobody here talks about how ugly that old insurance building is right there. Nobody's talking about that.
Why don't you go to Fort Lauderdale?
Excuse me, ma'am.
My point is this. The city marina is supposed to be the jewel of the sea. This is the photographic backdrop of every picture in this county. Okay, right now, it's not a jewel. Okay, it needs to be upgraded. The folks that talk about manatee issues, I wonder how many of these residents that live so close have actually stopped by the marina and walk in there, meet the staff, look at the warnings, look at the federal postings about manatee, look at the manatee no wake signs, okay? Look about the warnings about sewage.
Manatees can't read.
Okay, that's enough.
Look at the boat sewage operation. It happens twice a week, every week. And here's the bottom line. I've been in many marinas in my career. I'm a 100-ton master. I've been a professional captain all my life, okay? One thing they're not taking into account, these folks, and council, I hope you take into account, this marina is run by a top-notch staff. I was going to put in my statement, borderline militaristic. My wife asked me not to because she thought we were extreme. Borderline militaristic. There's no derelict vessels. There's no unwanted people around there. Everything is kept nice. The only noise after 7 p.m. is me walking my Shih Tzu dog around the marina on my way. That's it. That's it. So, improvement repairs, yeah, it has to happen. But the need is there. And for somebody to say, what is the need about expanding? I'm sorry, but you're living in shelter life. You're not aware that there's not a single spot. If I have money, I will build a 5-acre lot right now. I will drop it anywhere in Vero Beach, and it will be full of boats and RVs within 30 days. Okay. The need is there. And anybody who goes out there and lives like a regular person knows it. I apologize. That was my question. How can you afford not to? Thank you.
Please hold the applause. I know, please, please.
Hello, my name is Joan Clark. I used to live at the marina, and I know there's a a need for more places for boats, if not the marina, then in the storage or the moorings. But anyhow, I'm upset that you're doing a phase one, just concerned with the dry storage. When the city has the three corners to worry about, we have this new Jimmy Graves site, and I know isn't part of the city, but it seems like there's a lot of overlap between these three areas. Can't the city council and the county work together and come up with, they're talking about a boat barn over at Three Corners. Do we need 2 boat barns? Can the Big Blue be used as a boat storage area? And I think one thing we really need is a launching ramp somewhere on the west side of the river. Most people that launch their boats on trailers live on the other side of the river, so they have to pull their boats over the bridge to launch them. We have 2 launching ramps, Riverside and at Williams Park. Can't we do something to coordinate all these? Lots of areas, lots of possibilities. Why are we tackling one little site at this meeting when there's so many things? The River House, McWilliams Park, why does the dog park need waterfront property? I mean, there's so many other And another thing, I know they're talking about the manatees, and manatees everyone cares about manatees. A couple days ago, I kayaked around McWilliams Park, the marina, the lagoon area, all through the mooring field. I didn't see one piece of seagrass except on a couple boats. And you can do all you want about pump outs and everything, but that, put your paddle down in the river and it comes up coated with muck. Seagrass doesn't grow in muck, and if you don't do something about the muck, you're not going to get manatees in there. Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Moss, Indian River County Commissioner, but I'm here tonight to speak to you as a former fellow council member. For those who might not know, because 3 of you are new, I didn't have the pleasure of serving with you at the time. At the inception of this concept, I voted against both the concept of expansion and also the permitting for it. So it was not unanimous. That's history. Going forward, we'll see what happens. But this certainly, whatever we might think of it, is the start of something big. That's not an overstatement. My concern is, and I know it won't happen tomorrow, and we talked about that years ago, and that's true. It does not happen tomorrow. But when you start down a path for something big, ultimately, it probably will happen. It becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy in that regard. My concern is that we're shoving off on this course, or could be shoving off on a course that will take us in the opposite direction of what we currently have, which is a beautiful, very special place. And we all know that. I know that you all know that and appreciate it. So I'm simply asking you, and very respectfully, because I've sat where you sit, and I know how difficult the job it is, and I thank you for doing it. But I'm asking you very respectfully to please consider the long-term ramifications of the decisions that you'll be making very soon. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
How are you doing this evening? My name is Jerry Anchors, like anchors as in a boat. Date Palm Road. I just have 2 basic things to say. Why and loyalty. Why would we be making this investment when it takes 15 years to recoup the funds? I mean, it isn't really too wise in that regards. Secondly, loyalty. What about all the taxpayers here that have been paying over the years to support the area? I think this will almost impact about 400 residents. They've been paying over the years taxes. So what about the loyalty to them and the lifestyle that they've come to enjoy? And lastly, I'd like to close that
if this project does go through and it impacts my property value, I will be looking to have my property reappraised, you know, and contact the assessor's office and seek an abatement. And I will be sending this out to other residents in the area. So that may negatively impact what you guys are trying to accomplish. And how much money do you really need? I mean, Vero is pulling in so much money between, you know, we're a wealthy community. So enough is enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephen Brooks. I live on Periwinkle Drive. And when I moved to Vero Beach 18 years ago, I was a neighbor of Laura Moss over in the Castaway Cove. So, but I have a slightly different perspective on things. Just one quick question. The size of this building, so this is all in the neighborhood of the museum and the theater. Is this bigger or smaller than those buildings that exist?
Bigger or smaller than which building? Sorry.
Well, we've got a big museum building right in the park, and we've got a big theater in this neighborhood. Is this bigger, or is this a much smaller building than the existing structures?
I made a promise I wouldn't answer a question I didn't know the answer to.
Okay.
I will get that information. My gut feeling tells me that, and Jason's going to go do a little research. My gut feeling tells me that this building is not as big as the Center for the Arts.
It's smaller than the ones that are there in the neighborhood. Okay. Well, I was looking up. I have a boat, and I happen to be one of the fortunate few to have one in the marina. And I'm all set. I've got mine, a few extra docks, fixing things, and won't do good for me. So why do I care? And why should anybody care? And it's because so many people in the community are not being served and don't have the opportunity to have a boat. They don't have a dock behind their house, or they don't. And right now we've got over 9,000 boats registered in Indian River County, according to the Motor Vehicle Department that registers those. And we've got a marina with 108 slips and 57 moorings and 63 indoor storage spots and a waiting list, apparently. And so for the people that aren't the fortunate few that, you know, live right there or can have their own docks, this is something we need to do for the community. It's the decision that going forward, long after the neighbors have moved and we've all moved on, what's built will continue to serve people. And it's really, really important to do that. There's always objections when people try and do things. You know, Humson Park, everybody wanted that built, but it turned out fabulous. You go down there, there's an art show all the time, and people didn't want the dog park. I don't have a dog, but it's great people have a dog park. The jungle trail, all of that. So the real thing is making a decision to say yes to things that will benefit folks instead of no to a few that object. And by saying yes to all those things, that we've created great assets going forward by supporting Marina and giving people that don't quite have the access, the ability to put their boats there is a good thing that will be good for many, many years. It's tough to say sometimes when local people come up, but I don't think it's going to be unsightly. I think it's going to be very nice looking. And as I say, I've got mine, so I don't care, but I do care because that's for the city.
Thank you. Close.
Good evening, I'm Florence Ann Roberts, city resident, and this is not comment, I'm asking two questions. I was listening to the Clean Water Coalition, the concerns about the dredged materials, and so you probably know Mr. Fontaine. Does the Army Corps require, when you apply for a permit for dredging, does it require that you specify where the dredged materials go?
They do, and ultimately the dredged material is expected to go to the landfill.
And so have we gotten that permit from the Army Corps? So they see that it's going to a landfill, and did we specify where that would be?
No, my expectation is the landfill will use it as general cover material. I believe we put our garbage in and then they put fill material on top of that.
And so, and will that be on site as you had suggested?
So the material is soupy and wet when you first get it. You have to place it somewhere so that dewater is not quite the right term, but basically so all the moisture will leave it and it becomes a material you can actually handle. At this time, we can modify the permit or revisit areas to do that temporary storage, handling of material, but we do have enough room on site to do it there.
Oh, okay, second question. When the original plan came out, it had 3 options. One was renovate or repair, minimal expansion. It had a 8,000 square foot boat barn, same footprint. Second option was moderate. It had an 8,000 square foot boat barn, same footprint. And the so-called maximum expansion was 16,000 square feet. So when those 3 concepts came, did council ask for and review costs and benefits for all 3?
Monty, those
Yes.
they weren't the same footprint.
The first two.
Tim, will you address,
I'm sorry?
Tim, will you address the sizes of the boat buildings?
I don't have the exact sizes from the Marina Master Plan.
I do. I do. The first one, it's 8,060 square feet, or 100, whatever. And the second one, it's the
What's the
same.
existing footprint? How big is that building?
Just about 8,000, a little over 8,000.
Yeah, around that 8,000 number. It's my understanding that the initial plan envisioned the Waddell building would stay in place, but due to the limitations on the building, the city hasn't been able to rent it out to a, is it marine-specific use?
We weren't successful in getting any response to the RFPs, is why I believe the impetus for looking at larger sizes of the buildings.
Right, but the first 2 concepts both had the dry storage building on the same footprint. It was the third concept, the so-called maximum expansion, that doubled it to 16,060 square feet. So my question is, did council ask for and look at costs and benefits for all 3 options? Thank you, because fiduciarily I would hope so. Thank you.
And the answer to that question is yes. At the city council budget workshops, we had included in the workshop package a 5-year capital improvement program based on each of those different options that showed, year-end revenues, debt service, and the requirements for contributions to the marina. So yes, there were 3 different versions of the 5-year capital improvement plan presented to council at that budget workshop.
And we have an answer?
Well, basically it's on the property appraiser, not our official site plan record, but it appears from the property appraiser, the museum is about 75,000 square feet, so the new dry storage building would be 1/3, because it's 25,000, and the theater is 50,000 square feet, so it'd be half the size of the theater.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll repeat that. So 75,000, the museum is 75,000 square feet. So the proposed dry storage building would be 1/3 of the size of the museum, and the theater building is about 50,000 square feet, so it'd be about half the size of the theater. And that's all from the property appraiser's records.
My name is Joseph Cafanti, and I live at 441 Holly Road in the city of Vero Beach. I have a couple questions. First question is, why are you doing this? It's not funny, it really is a serious question. And I'd like to hear from all 5 of you. There are 5 today. Right? Why are you doing this?
Well, number one, we have to, a building from 1960s that needs to be replaced. So that's the first part of it. Okay, second of all, it's outdated in the size of boats that it carries. Back in the 60s and 70s, and when I grew up here, we all had 15, 16-foot ski boats. Those really don't exist anymore. Boats are now 22, 24, 28 foot. So we're updating it to meet the demand that way.
It's nice history, but why are you doing this? And let me ask part B of that question, for whom are you doing it? I think these are
Voters.
legitimate questions and they would like
Voters.
to respond. Pardon?
Voters. That's who we're
What
doing.
voters? Be specific. Who are they? Where are they?
Well, we have 30 on a waiting list right now.
Well, back here.
There's some back here in the room. We have 30 on a waiting list right now.
And why, you know, there's a lot of people that get hungry. I'm one of them. And why doesn't the city open up some restaurants? If you want to serve people, sometimes there's a line to get in restaurants. Why not open up a couple restaurants? Just another play, why don't you do that? Why are you taking my tax dollars and using them for a commercial venue?
We're not really taking your tax dollars, sir. This money is generated in the marina by the boaters that are there.
It's the
an enterprise
property,
fund.
it's the property that's worth money, and that property could generate money, revenue, and that's why it's my tax dollars. It's my tax dollars support that property. So you guys can't answer these questions to my satisfaction.
This marina is very historic. It's been valued by the people here in Vero Beach, and it's our responsibility. Before I was sitting on council, they passed a master concept plan, and we're following through on that plan to restore and rehabilitate and make it very attractive for the people here.
Well, the city never should have gotten involved in the first place, but now that it owns it, it bailed the former owners out. That's what happened. I remember that happening. And it also bailed out the people that owned that pile of mud in the middle of the river, the Lost Tree Village or whatever it was. That was another fiasco. But the problem is that you're using my money to do this, and you're getting involved in a business that you shouldn't be in, and you're competing with private industry. If there's such a demand for it, don't you think that somebody in the 32963 neighborhood would build their own, whatever you call it, the marina? Now, I want to ask one question to the finance lady. Her name, I think she said that prior to the city turning, I have trouble, I'm verbally handicapped here. You didn't want to imagine, I can't use the word that I'd like to use, so I have to struggle with handicap, okay? She says that prior to the city giving $3 million or something over, paying off the debt, that the marina was just breaking even and struggling. And after it was paid off, that all of a sudden, now there's not only the amount of money, it was $300 and some odd thousand a year, but not only that, now there's more. What caused that increase, if I'm correct in me understanding what that she said?
Yes, you are.
Why
So
not?
the amount that got paid off was $340,000 a year in debt service. So immediately there was a $340,000 improvement, but that was also 3 years ago. So the marina's revenues overall have increased in the last 3 years, in part because of a rate increase and also because of increases in demand. So that accounts for like the other $100,000 or so across the last 3 years that the situation's improved by.
Okay, so there's increased demand, so
There's-
it wasn't full for a long time?
It's a combination of that and rate increases, but we're talking about since 17, 18, so it's been the last 4 or 5 years. So things have gone up. So it's mostly the debt service, but there's also just been some
And you've
improvement in
changed the
marine service.
rates?
And the rates have changed, yes, in the last 4 years.
Yes.
Pardon?
We had one rate increase on my watch, a big, and that was only part of it. Another part of it was putting the right size boats in the right size slips and really maximizing the potential. You know, we had quite a few boats that were smaller and larger slips, and we moved within that first year, probably about 40% of those boats around the different slips to maximize the revenue and the potential of the marina.
What's the first year? When
2019 when I came on board.
2019?
19.
And when was the money transferred over?
Fiscal 18-19, in 2019.
Same time.
Yeah. So that was right when the improvement began. In fiscal 18-19, the net cash was around 152,000, and now in this most recent fiscal year, it's up to about 476.
Okay, so the marina now is supposedly making money as a commercial enterprise, is that correct?
It is correct, and I want to point out one other fact. The marina, as part of that, transfers $103,000 as of current year into the general fund. It not only does not spend your tax dollars, it offsets your tax dollars by contributions to the general fund. The marina is self-supporting, run as a business, as an enterprise fund, funded by user fees, and actually contributes to the general fund and decreases the amount of money that's required in taxes, just for
Okay, so you're running a business so that you can make money. So again, why don't you go open up a chain of restaurants? I'm finished here, but I just want to make one comment about correct something that somebody said. There's only one jewel in Indian River County, and it's about 2 miles east of here. It's known as the Atlantic Ocean. That's the only jewel.
Good evening. Roger Marcel. I live at the city marina. I wanted to know, has the city done a valuation for the Waddell building?
What type of evaluation?
How much is it worth? What would it sell for? What would it take to rebuild that building?
First of all, we can't sell it because of the restrictions that we have when we use grant revenue to purchase it. We tried to lease it out to replace the revenue that was lost when the Waddell Insurance Group left, and I believe that was about $5,000 a month that we were getting, somewhere in that neighborhood. But we had an RFP, we had no response.
You mentioned that it had to be maritime.
There are uses placed on.
How is the Waddell insurance maritime?
The find restrictions, and I have them here with that, could dig them up. You could have restaurants, office. So the insurance use, because it wasn't a dominant use, was not objected to by fine.
Accessory.
Accessory use.
Accessory to the marina use.
One of the plans left that building. Couldn't we find someone to take that building, especially if we could run a business out of it?
The initial plan envisioned the building staying. We did an RFP and got no response.
How long did that RFP run? How long was it on the market?
I promised I wouldn't answer questions I didn't know. I didn't know the answers to. But
April till June 30th, 2020.
Typically about 3 months is how we have them out.
Yeah,
Right, what year?
2020.
Is anyone else concerned that this was all approved during COVID, when there was a stay-at-home order in place and the public
It was
had
approved in
nothing to do?
2019, before COVID. It started in 2018, the discussions.
When is the final vote for this building, for this project?
Well, the council was here tonight to listen to the community concerns. We want to get from them as soon as possible what their decision is on what size building they would like us to move forward with.
So do we have a date, or it's still, we don't have a date for the vote?
They could do that tonight if they want to.
Recently, it was found out that a commercial entity was taking up space at the city marina. I guess they have been removed or they've left. Does anyone want to comment on that?
Are we talking about the yacht business?
Yes.
Sean?
We had a boat club that was back in that lagoon area, renting slips.
I think, are you talking about Boylan Yachts?
No.
Okay.
So we had a boat club that was renting slips from us back in that lagoon area. Recently, we've gone through and kind of going through this process and realizing that that area is zone park P2. Once we found that out, we had moved them, and we started swapping boats around to get them back out into the main leased area where it's authorized.
How long were they there illegally?
Possibly about a year.
Right now, the north side of the marina is completely overgrown. Part of that overgrowth is coming onto my property, and it's been that way for a long time. Years ago, that was a nice, clean, mowed lot. We also could see the lagoon there. Now that's all overgrown as well. Someone came in and just did a terrible job just trimming those hibiscus that are growing up around that lagoon. And the hibiscus and weeds growing around the oak tree on the city property there that hasn't been trimmed or taken care of for, I'd say, 5 years.
I'll make sure that gets taken care of.
Back just on the boat thing, I just want to point out, I mean, there was never a code enforcement complaint made to the city regarding that. So once it came to my attention, I got with the city marina and it was taken care of within a week.
Would we expect those types of things would happen with this 2 to 3 times larger project going forward?
Well, this project is going to be completely reviewed through our site plan process. It's going to have a very specific development order that's going to be issued, and it will be, and the marina will have to follow that development order.
So P2 states that there could be no commercial enterprise there, right?
No, you can have commercial enterprises in the P2 zoning because we do have in our parks, we have a restaurant in our park. We have in the museum, which is in a park, they have a restaurant and they have a museum store shop. So you can have retail enterprises at a limited function, limited basis as accessory to the park is allowed in the P2. So it's not an absolute no commercial activities. It's just in this case, it's very specific that marina activities, commercial marina activities have to occur in the C1M zoning because that's all per our comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Peter Robinson. I live at 315 Great Twig Road, Vero Beach, Florida, 32963. I had a question for any of you. Did any of you watch the Berkshire Hathaway meeting this last Saturday with Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger on, where they talked about, some of their problems in life, where you go out and they said that the first big mistake they made was they bought a textile company called Berkshire Hathaway, and they believed they could fix that. But what they didn't know was that this textile company was in New England, and a lot of textile companies had fled down to where the TVA was, and they could do textiles much cheaper because of the utilities being cheaper. And so Berkshire eventually found things like Geico and other things to get into to keep them from getting totally wiped out. So, and as they were talking about that, I think you might want to think a little bit about, you had a utility company, and the utility company was getting creamed by FP&L. And the reason it was getting creamed by FP&L was because, as she talked about, she keeps talking about depreciation. You figure depreciation. Well, that's right. You have to figure depreciation on your buildings. You got to figure depreciation on all of these things. But if you're a utility company, you can write it off against earnings. And if you write it off against earnings, you pay less taxes. This is why Berkshire bought, Middle America Electric, because, as he pointed out at the meeting, they get to write off all this depreciation, and they have lots of earnings to write it off against. The problem you have as a city is you don't have any damn earnings to write it off against. You know, you just kind of put it over here in another box. And that's really the problem you've got here with the marina, because there are other marina programs coming out. I've seen some proposals on them, and that's their big deal, is they can depreciate and they can bring in people in the 32963 area that can use advantage of that and write them off. And so all I'm saying is, sometimes you can sit here and spend all this time trying to figure out whether you're going to do a business, and maybe the business should have been down where the TVA was, where you got better utilities. So that's my only point there. The other point I want to make is, do you have a bid on the building yet? Has anybody gotten a bid on this building?
John, would you like to answer? We don't have a final set of plans yet, Peter, so.
We do just have some preliminary cost estimates, opinions of cost. And we have worked with various vendors to come up with the numbers that we presented thus far.
What are you figuring for price per square foot on the building?
I don't have that information right in front of me on the price per square foot, because we have to break down what our site costs, what our
right.
dock
I
costs.
recognize that, but there is the biggest problem. We got a guy that came into power 2 years ago named Joe Biden, that guy, and he has totally gotten things screwed up, and we've got inflation going like crazy. You probably have noticed, that it's going 8, 10, 20%. I talked with the guys who were building steel buildings, and one of them told me, don't bother, come back in 6 months, because I can't tell you what the hell it's going to be. The prices are going up so fast. So you may be arguing over how much money you got to put into this building. You may not have enough money. I think you need to get some hard bids right now to see what the market is, and then you better check it all the time.
And we'll do that so we get a final set of plans, but right now we're trying to figure out what size we're building it.
You need to get, you can spend a lot of time drawing plans, and then it doesn't work. You don't have the money, and you've got to be careful right now. I've been there. I'm a contractor. I remember when Jimmy Carter was in, and every month I had to raise my prices every month because I couldn't keep up with it. And you've got to get ready for that. The other thing is, you talked about on your drainage, you talked about that you're meeting all the codes today. I can tell you this from other developers I've talked with, the DEP is looking at revising a lot of these drainage codes, and if they do, you're going to have a real tough time making this work. And the only other problem I want to point out is that my dad he said he had a 52-foot Hatteras or something like that. My dad had a 55-foot Hatteras. And when he died, we were lucky to inherit this wonderful 55-foot Hatteras, which was over, he had it down at Royal Port Cove down in Palm Beach. And it was over being fixed. And it took us forever to get the damn thing across and not get it fixed. And we were in a recession. And then we wanted to sell the boat. And boats don't sell well in recessions. They're toys. You have fun with your toys, and then when you hit the recession, that's the thing they start dumping because they can't afford it. So you need to watch out. And then I have one other question. The original loan that you guys paid off, what was the interest rate on that loan?
I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head. It's 3 years ago we retired it, so I'd have to go and look that up. I'm sorry.
Okay, because your 1% interest rate seems to be way below.
It's extremely low on purpose. But understand, we're not borrowing from a bank. We're literally loaning the money to ourselves. So that's the whole reason for loaning the money to ourselves, is so we can grant ourselves an extremely low interest rate.
Right.
The reason for the 1% is that that is essentially a make-whole rate. That's about the average earning rate on the city's short-term investments, because we're restricted to Treasury instrumentalities, federal instrumentalities, and things. So basically, it's a make-whole, so that the city general fund doesn't lose money by loaning this money to the marina. But it's absolutely purposely not meant to mirror any sort of bank loan.
But as your rates go up, are you going to increase the rates? Because we're all watching those short-term rates go up. And I know
Our
When I
10-year
make-
average on short-term earnings has been 1%. We've had a bad year or two, we had a great year or two, but across a 10-year period, it's been about 1. As I said, we're restricted by state law, so it's not like our pension holdings. We can only hold very, very short-term investments, treasury bills less than 7 years, and things like that. So certainly if council wants to, we can revisit the rate and make it higher, but it wasn't intended to be like a bank loan. It was intended to make us whole.
Okay, but you know, as a taxpayer, that came out of the general fund, so I guess it gets to make up for it if it's too low.
It does not actually come out of the general fund. It comes out of reserves that have been set aside specifically for capital projects that are not part of the ongoing general fund budget. So.
Okay. And then, can I turn this on to show you a couple pictures?
You gotta wrap up sometime, Peter. We got plenty of people want to speak. I don't have any.
I mean, you guys have lots of pictures up here.
Unfortunately, this ordinance is not a time limit that we're under right now. It's in the city council meeting.
Hold this up. All right, y'all take a look. Everybody talks about what good shape the marina's in. This is what it really looks like over there. You see any plants? You have all these pretty pictures of plants and other things. Well, there aren't any plants out in front of that. And then you got other boats stuck out there. And, you know, see, this is another one. We just don't have good stuff taken care of. And so what happens is, you show pretty pictures and, oh, it's all wonderful because it's all going to be new and it's all true. But you've got to take care of the damn stuff. And that's what your problem has been all along. And that's what everybody's complaining about. You know, you're not taking care of it. And so in reality, you'll get it built and off we go again. We'll watch it go downhill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Cunningham, Vero Beach resident for 40 years. And so it's out in the open right up front. I've been on the City Marine Commission for almost 12 years. I'm here speaking on my own behalf, not representing the Marine Commission. I've also been in the boat business since I was in high school. So all of my working career has been around the water. I've also been a director of the MIATC, Marine Industry, the Treasure Coast. And that's really why I'm here. As a former director and board member, they've asked me to read their letter of support to this project. If I may, on behalf of our 109 members, the Marine Industry Association of the Treasure Coast is pleased to support the expansion and improvements to the Vero Beach Municipal Marinas. The MIATC is a trade association representing all segments of the marine industry in Indian River, St. Lucie, and Martin counties. Boating and waterway access are important components to the economy and quality of life enjoyed by the residents of Vero Beach. Florida Inland Navigation District's 2018 Economic Update for Indian River County estimates the intercoastal waterway generates almost $500 million, $496 million in annual revenues for Indian River County alone. $246 million are derived from boating-related tourism, boat clubs, fishing guides, sightseeing trips, and $119 million in direct boater spending, approximately 4,000 waterway-related jobs. In 2020, national boat sales reached a 13-year high, some of it because of COVID. People want to get out, get away from land, get out of their house. I also failed to say I'm part owner of Vero Marine Center. I can attest to the fact that it's been busy. Last month, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission registered its 1 millionth vessel. 1 million registered vessels in the state of Florida. The marine industry continues to see an increased demand for vessel ownership and desire for outdoor recreation opportunities. There are very few locations left to expand water-dependent uses such as boat ramps, marinas, and boat storage. Critical to the development and sustaining our industry in the state of Florida, which is second to agriculture in the state of Florida. Waiting lists for wet slips, dry storage are growing longer every year. Once again, as a marina owner, I can testify that I don't have slips. I'm no longer even taking the waiting list. The demand for more vessel storage is real. The city of Vero Beach has the rare opportunity to expand its city-owned marina and to help meet the needs of its current citizens and plan for growth of the marina through its master plan. Vero Beach Municipal Marina is a regionally beneficial asset. The MIATC strongly supports the proposed efforts to maximize the number of dry storage spaces, which will also help keep storage fees affordable for the general boating public. The association would like to encourage the city to seize this opportunity to construct a marina and dry storage that will meet the current and future needs of its boating residents. Thank you in advance. Well, that's from Chris Dempsey, who's the president of the MIATC. I'd also like to add on a personal note, I've managed and run 2 big dry storage facilities, one in Miami, very big, late 70s, early 80s, we were putting 40-foot boats 35 feet in the air. This is a very conservative plan. I think Sean, everybody involved in the process here, I think has been kind to the neighborhood around them. I will also say that the market right now, based on the research I've done for dry stack, the real call is 35 to 45 feet. Bigger boats that maybe can't be put on lifts, they certainly can't be trailered, and I think this is a conservative project, keeping in mind Vero Beach keeping the small community, and still, as Mayor Brackett said, 16 and 18-foot boats may be a thing of the past, but they are now in that 25 to 30-foot zone. That's a small entry-level boat. And I think, based on the waiting list that I see everywhere, the timing of this project is perfect. A former city manager that I actually had worked for me for a little while, I remember before he passed, he told me 3 things that make Vero Beach Vero. Don't let any of them get away. One was our power plant. The other was the Dodgers. And he said, but by God, if you have any say, don't let that marina get away. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Leonard, I need you to wait for a while. We got other people want to speak. You've been here twice already.
Public comment yet.
No, it's all public comments. You've been here twice already. So let some of the others speak first, okay? We'll have to leave. Thank you.
I'm Cheryl Milliken, and I've been in Vero. My parents moved here in the 50s from Ferndale, Michigan. My father was a builder. And I'm on 4112 Indian River Drive since '59. I mean, I haven't lived there, but I'm in the same house my father built. But my concern was, I was real fortunate to grow up in Vero Beach. We enjoyed the ocean, the river, we skied, and the orange groves. Well, we've lost the orange groves, and I'm really concerned about the river because when I grew up here, we used to ski where all those boats are docked. That was the old town, we ski around. And it just seemed so out of place for them to be there. And that started happening about 25 years ago. And when you cross over the bridge, I think I counted like about 50 boats out there, and you'll see these dolphins kind of, swimming around those boats. And it just seems like it's not right. But, and then to have this, people, we're not Fort Lauderdale. This is a smaller town. So, but I guess my question is, is this, how many boats are you going to let dock out there in the river? Do you know how many? Because it seems like I counted 50. Do you know how many?
We have 57 mooring balls.
57 boats can be out there?
Mooring balls, yes.
Okay. And then, I understand it's only $20 a day, is that correct? Be out there?
That's correct. That's the daily mooring rate.
Well, I think it should be raised to $100 a day. Because, well, this is why I walk my dog down there different times.
We need to keep it on topic of the dry storage. Okay.
On the dry storage, is that what we're talking? Okay. But it just seems like it's gonna pollute our water. That's what I'm concerned about. Having all those boats out there. And then, I know there was one day, there was a boat that was like 40 feet, an older couple from Virginia, and they had like 400 horsepower. Not one, but 3. Everything's so extravagant. How's that not gonna pollute our river, And then also one last question, why do you need to dredge when we already have like 100-foot yachts out there? They seem to manage. We have some huge boats. So I don't know, why do we have to dredge? Seems like, you know, because it's such a small area, and I just hope you're not going to ruin it. That's all. You know.
A lot of that water was deeper back in the early days of the marina. We have the 2 drainage ditches just south of the between the dry storage and the dog park. That was put in, and there's also another one in the northeast corner of the lagoon.
Well, how did
it's the same sediment. When you look at it, there's a little bit of a break in the middle of the marina proper, but it's the same type of sediment that had traveled from Central Beach to the lowest point, which is at the marina, out into the lagoon.
Okay.
They put those baffle boxes in early to mid 2000s. So it's 70 years prior to that, it was just free flowing. Now there's catchment basins, you know, as that stuff fills up, then Public Works will come out
How
and
are
have
these
periodically.
100-foot boats getting in there?
Out in the center of the river, there's adequate depth.
Okay.
The depth that we're looking to dredge is probably about the existing docks, roughly about halfway in. So from the big boats out on the end, roughly about halfway in, that depth gets cut in half or less.
And so you're not concerned about having all those boats out there, about polluting our river, just having, why do we have to have how, that's like having a trailer park out there, as one of our neighbors said a long time ago.
I think we've talked about our
I know,
program.
it just seems like people should get a hotel, and if they want a big boat, buy a house on the river, or.
Ma'am, we're talking about dry storage now, not the boats on the water.
Okay, but
Okay,
just keep that in mind.
that'll be a different meeting.
Okay.
Does that mean you have another meeting?
When's the next meeting?
Hello, I'm Brian Vega. I live on the edge of Fort Pierce and Vero Beach. I own businesses in Vero Beach, Fort Pearson, and Stewart. I am in the boating business, Carefree Boat Club. And I do have one question and a couple of comments. My one question, expanding this marina, what is that going to do to the property values of the surrounding houses? Is that going to increase them? A nicer, more expanded marina? No. No? Are you sure?
Yes.
Have you looked at other projects from other marinas?
Doesn't matter.
That's not the question. The question is, are you sure? 1,000% sure.
Okay, sir.
Okay, point being, okay. We'll get to that. I'd love to look at the statistics on that. A lot of the issues that have arisen today are ideals versus reality, and ideals versus what's actually going on. So, population is increasing naturally. I don't know if anybody's actually seen the roadways in Vero Beach and actually taken a look around. It's growing, whether we like it or not, unfortunately. It's nice to have this little pocket, this little gym, but it is growing, whether we like it or not, and there's not much we can do about it. With that said, boaters are, many of the people that have grievances here, I'm not sure are boaters, but boaters are going to go boating. They're going to buy boats, they're going to have boats, and they're going to use them. With an increased population, that means more boats in the area. So on a pollution standpoint, FAU did a study in 2016, along with IRSC and the Harbor Branch research facility on the border between Vero and Fort Pierce. That study said the #1 polluter of the Indian River was septic tank runoff. #1, not boats. #1 was septic tank runoff. What was #2? Anybody know? Stormwater, not boats. So anybody that has an issue about pollution being a problem, that is not the problem at hand here. So facts versus ideals versus reality. So reality is the boats are not the bigger polluter. #2, the demand. Being in this industry, ever since when COVID hit, as the gentleman spoke of earlier, the boating industry shot up tenfold. I've gotten more people than I can count asking me, should I buy a boat or should I join a club? I'm not going to get into a sales pitch here, but the demand is there. Fort Pierce City Marina that we are in has over 100 plus people on the waiting list, and they stopped adding people to the waiting list. The Stewart Marina that we are in has 100 plus people on the waiting list. They've stopped adding people to the waiting list. And Vero Beach now is having an opportunity to take all the present boaters that are keeping boats at their house, trailing it to the park, getting boats out of the water on a dry storage lift out of the water and keeping them into storage. So this is actually helping boats get out of the water, not putting them into the water. I'm not sure if anybody was aware of that. And we're taking an old, dilapidated building that I get to drive past every single day, and man, that's ugly. And we're taking it and making it a beautiful thing. And a lot of people have concerns with their own property surrounding it. I understand that. I completely get that.
30 seconds.
Thank you. But the concerns there, again, ideals versus reality. We have facts to back all of this up. This is ideals versus reality. I'm sorry, guys. And the finances, guess what? It works. So this is a wonderful project. I am for it, not just because I'm in the boating industry, but because I am also a lifetime boater. And yeah, I'm sorry you can't stop growth for your own personal ideals. It doesn't work that way. So I hope this gets approved and passed. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Devin Geyser, and we live within walking distance of the marina. Just a couple of concerns that I have. One would be the effect of the rowing club. Within very close walking distance. I believe that would be somewhat of a hazard for rowers in the water because more boats, bigger boats. The second would be the environmental impact. I know, for example, it's been said manatees, since they are a threatened species. The third one would be the noise and the air pollution for the area. Room for larger boats means bigger engines, and of course forklifts. The fourth one would be the scenery. Some would say unattractive for the neighborhood to look at because it could be an eyesore. Even with the setback of the trees, it's hard to hide a building of that size, especially with the view from the dog park. The fifth one would be the impact of the nearby bait shop that is right across the bridge on the other side, or you know what I mean, which due to sound pollution and environmental pollution, it could affect the business. Since a lot of people do fish in that general area, it might affect that as well. And I do understand the desire to expand business and increase revenue, but I don't believe that it should be at the cost of the nearby residents and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Please hold the applause.
Hi, Karen Marcel, 3627 Indian River Drive, city taxpayer since 1988. And I just have a couple of questions I'd love to get feedback from. First one is, do you really think it's acceptable that an environmental study wasn't done before venturing into this whole concept? The only study it was based on was a 2004 manatee protection study.
I think he mentioned 3 different studies. Coastal Tech, not just 2004, there's one in 2021 and one in 2016. If I got those dates correct, if I don't, correct me, please.
Yes, in general, there's been a host of different studies of the lagoon, and again, the technical literature I've read does not point to well-run marinas as causing any kind of significant impact to the lagoon. It's all focused on the septic systems and stormwater runoff.
So when I called you and asked what the study was, you said 2004 Manatee Protection Plan.
One of the studies I referenced was the 2004 Manatee Protection Plan. The next was the DEP Water Management District BMAP program, which is a 2021 study. And the other was the Indian River Lagoon report. I thought was 2016. I can pull that up and check the exact date.
Okay, you didn't mention that to me, so if we could have records of those would be great, or where we can see those.
We discussed this earlier in the meeting. We're putting links on our website to all 3 of those studies.
Okay, great. Next question is, they mentioned that we would benefit from the generating of the income. How much actually goes back to the city?
From that fund back with.
At the present time, the marina returns $103,000 a year back to the general fund. That is 6% of revenue, so as revenues go up, that amount will go up. But
So-
right now, it's $103,000.
So it always is just 6% that we get back?
It's 6%, it's 6% of the revenue generated, yes.
Okay, trying to understand how things are managed, and I called to try to find out how many racks have been historically empty in the dry storage building. And I was told by Tammy that Sean didn't have those records and neither did you. So I was curious how we wouldn't know that.
I have records for what has been filled because we invoice people monthly, and that's what I had offered. I can tell you who is there. I can't tell you who hasn't been there, and I don't know what kind of records Sean keeps.
Okay. Back to the Waddell building. If we had, I know it was out for 3 months during COVID and you didn't have anybody. If we had somebody that fit that bill, would you consider keeping it, leasing it, and having, go back to the plan of just rebuilding this building and fixing the docks?
Well, I think the question is, who is that somebody and where they at? Because that building's been available for a long time, not just 3 months.
Well, it was on RFP 3 months.
Not RFP, but I've had phone calls already, it's 3 months ago about it.
Well, since we put the word out, there's been a lot of interest. So if we could,
They talk to us.
well, I'm not gonna have them talk to you if it's not a possibility. So I'm asking you, if we have somebody that would lease it for $5,000 a month, would you consider keeping the building, which probably has a lot of value, which we don't know what that number is, and just rebuilding the storage building and fixing the docks, which was what we really all wanted?
I would have to, from my standpoint, I'd see the financials on it and see.
I thought we got the financials.
Ma'am?
Not on the building itself, but I would also mention that it's my understanding that building needs a little bit of work there, maybe even a fair amount of work. So I'm just going to throw that.
But would you be open to exploring that option, is what I'm asking?
I answer from my standpoint. I would have to see the financials on it because
I have
a feeling that the larger boat barn brings in more money than $5,000 a month for that building.
Well, maybe it could even get more now. I mean, commercial real estate is through the roof. It was 5,000 years ago. So I mean, I'm sure you could get a lot more than that.
I would recommend that if you have someone that's really interested in the building, give us a call and we can talk about it. If there's some interest that meets the parameters confined, we could report that back to council and then if it makes sense, we could do that financial analysis. But again, do nothing to this, there's still a cost. Like we talked about, there would have to be additional money invested in the Waddell building to get it back up to current standards. It would be more difficult then. We wouldn't then be doing any stormwater management for the Waddell site. It would be an existing site, would not require stormwater management. So there's trade-offs that we're looking at doing that. But if you have somebody that's interested, have a call. We'll set up.
And you said restaurant is one option. Like many people talked about a coffee shop, having a yoga for the Marine.
Hold on.
Okay.
It has to meet the zoning code.
Okay.
And you do a change of use. It's currently entitled, or it's currently permitted for an office building, which has a much lower parking requirement than any type of restaurant. A restaurant that size, it would probably need additional. Now, where's the the parking?
Well, I'm not saying exactly what. It could be multiple things. It could be a small coffee shop. It could be a yoga studio for the boaters. It could be, there's all kinds of options. So I'm just saying, if that's possible, I believe that we have a lot of interest. Okay. And lastly, well, two things last. When will you vote on this?
We wanted to answer that earlier. You could vote on it tonight if you wanted to. I doubt we will, but you could.
So after the end of tonight, you'll decide when that vote's going to be?
It'll be publicly noticed.
Yes. Yeah. Probably on the next meeting, be my guess.
Okay, and then the last thing, Jason Jeffries said earlier about the comprehensive plan, and that was adopted in 2018. Do you feel that you are abiding by Chapter 2, which states that Vero Beach's quality of life, individual identity, small town character, typified by low rise and low density scale of development will be maintained and continue in the manner, and I'll just name the three that I think are not being done: respects the community character and the quality of life of the community. 3, preserves and enhances coastal, environmental, natural, historic, and cultural resources. And 4, maintains and enhances the city's distinct overall low density residential character and diversity of residential neighborhoods. Are you upholding that?
No.
I'd ask each of you, do you feel that this is in line with Chapter 2 of the comprehensive plan?
I do.
You do?
I worked on that comp plan. We worked on it for 3 years on planning and zoning, and a lot of this came into consideration. When you brought up the fact of other uses for that building, what kind of impact is that to the neighborhood? That's huge. You know, we need to make that consideration.
I think most people would feel a huge metal industrial building would be much more harmful to the neighborhood than other alternatives. And will you listen to the people is what I'm asking. If we have a petition of how many, will you really consider changing your direction?
And you can submit all you want to the county, the city council members, the petitions, everything else. That's fine, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ryan Blade. I happen to be owner of Indian River News, one of the news outlets here in the county. I just have a question for council, something I was just kind of curious about. How do you find public input from tonight's meeting will affect the ultimate final outcome with regards to the marina?
Sir, if you're interviewing us from a journalist standpoint, that's not what this meeting's about.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Hey, thank you for the guidance. I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Giannotti. I am a homeowner in the Central Beach area and have been for 10 years. I'm a boater and I was involved in the marine industry as well. And it's very interesting. There's so much controversy back and forth about this issue. I am a Central Beach homeowner, as I said before, and I really appreciate what's called the Preservation Alliance. I appreciate everything that you've done to try to go after this thing correctly. But there's a lot of misinformation and missing pieces in your argument. I had a long list of
speak into the microphone, please?
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you. There's a lot of missing pieces in their argument about this issue. I had a list to address them, but they've already been addressed by everybody else, so I'm going to save your time and try to keep my message to you short. So I'm just going to go to the summary here. I really like my neighbors, but it's a very small group of people. All the little red signs that you see around Vero Beach are exclusively around Central Beach. You see them nowhere else in town. It's a really small group of people. And I know from being in the industry that there is a really large group of people that want to own boats and find a place to moor and store them. Everybody is in the business is telling you this, and we know that that is fact. So at the end of the day, it's really unfair for us Central Beach residents to deny boat storage for access to the rest of our community. It's just not fair. So when you vote, you should be democratic about this and pay attention to a larger majority of people in need than the smaller ones. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mike Johansson, Cindy's campaign manager. During my spare time, I chair the IRNA. We have sent you a position paper, which I'm sure, hopefully you read. It says we support the marina modernization, but it's not without condition. And as Judy mentioned before, one of our conditions and one of our concerns is muck. If you do the calculation for a 200 by 200 foot by 3 foot deep, you come out with 5,000 cubic yards of muck. And to say that we're going to build a plastic swimming pool in the front yard to contain it is probably not going to cut it. So we would request that you look at your muck, your dewatering, as you go through this process. We have heard a lot of mental energy being expended on this issue. Along the way, we have heard some facts. Fact number one, the two things that are keeping us from enjoying our lagoon are its quality, and the things that are killing these manatees, seagrass, are the lagoon's water quality, which has got absolutely nothing to do with the marina. If you want to expend mental energy, stormwater, septic, finally muck. Spend your energy on those three issues. Let's get the lagoon back into shape where we can actually see the bottom. Okay, and people like my good friend Paul can go out and catch more than 10 fish an entire day.
okay? His source of making a living is dying. And along with that, we're gonna go too. It's just a matter of time, okay? And our property values, everyone's been talking about, well, if we build a big building and sitting in the other, what's gonna happen to your property values if the lagoon starts smelling like a septic tank? Think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Hi, John Wester, 455 Fiddlewood Road. I have two questions. First question, is this the question period or is this the comment period?
They become one and the same.
The question period, I only have one more question.
period. They merged.
But the comment period, I'll come back later. But how high is the present Waddell building?
Waddell building?
Yeah.
Right, that's the height?
How high is that one wall? There's no roof on top of that. I mean, there's a roof, but no.
It's a one-story building, so, right?
Say 12 to 15 feet.
15 feet, okay? So we're gonna replace a 15-foot building with a 38-foot building, a 35-foot building, that's really 50 feet, is what you're telling me.
It's the same height as the current dry storage facility.
But the dry storage building is way down on the river. You're replacing this up near the residential area and adding more traffic. So basically, now we're taking the Waddell building, okay? We're gonna triple the size of the height of the Waddell building, correct?
If you take the size of the dry storage building there is now and you add the one that's been proposed, it's 60 foot longer.
But that's not my question. My question is, the Waddell building now, I think I've measured, it's about 15 feet. And we're going to replace that building after we tear it down by a bigger building right behind it, okay? Because I've also did all the measurements there, with a building that's 3 times the height.
49 feet.
Pardon?
49 feet.
49
49
feet versus the 15-foot one we have now.
And this dry storage will be behind the Waddell building.
I just don't want people, everything will be replaced by a much
The new
higher
storage
building.
building is 197 feet back into the site.
Pardon?
So the new building that's proposed is 197 feet back into the site up of Indian River Drive.
Just said it was, the area I calculated has to be like 210 to 225 feet.
197 feet.
From the water.
No.
How many square feet is the largest building you're voting on?
The approximate size is about 25,000 square feet for the proposed largest. So
25,000 square feet, right? And the building's going to be 115 feet wide, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So you're talking, it can't be, if you divide 25,000 square feet by 150 feet, you have a building that's almost 250 feet. I mean, it's simple math, 240.
The building's 210 feet. 210 feet.
210 feet times 115 is 25,000 is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Mind if I calculate that?
$24,150.
24,150. Okay, so that building is going to come out 210 feet from the water.
No, if you look at the site plan up there on the screen, the building is close to the water.
Right.
Okay, so we are almost 200 feet back from Indian River Drive.
I'm not talking from Indian River Drive. I'm talking, how far is it going to come out from the water?
Approximately 40 feet.
No, it's got to be more than that because the building's 210 feet.
Oh, to the front of the building.
How much space are you going to have in front of that building to wash off and everything else? You're not going to wash off inside the building. You said you're going to have a runoff, French drain and everything. How big is that? I mean, you got to bring the boats up. If you're bringing a 30-foot boat out, you can't have 10 feet in front of it.
it's approximately 30 feet. You can see it's on an angle, and so the washing of the boats occurs in the back.
So you're gonna bring out 30 feet of boats, and they have only 30 feet before you get into the storage building?
Sir, yeah, we launched the boats perpendicular to the seawall. Once they come out and go to those wash
I've had
racks.
a boat launch, so I know all about that.
Okay, so then you understand that when we're operating the forklift, we pick them up at the seawall, we back up, turn 90 degrees, place them on a wash rack. So
Right,
now they're
right.
parallel with the sea.
But you'll have more than one boat there. You're not gonna put one down, wash it off, go get another one, or do you have, nobody ever come that ever needs, 3 or 4 boats at the same time?
Depending on the demand, it may be 1 boat, it may be 5 or 6 boats.
So how far is the front of the building going to be from the water?
The front of the building or the back of the building? The east or west side?
The waterfront part, how far is that gonna be?
I believe it's about 25 to 30 feet on the southern portion, and it's probably around 35 to 40 feet on the north portion.
Okay, so you come out 40 feet plus the 210, right?
I think these are issues that we'll do for final site plan design,
Yeah,
Mr.
but
Wester, but
it's important.
what's your question that we could
Well, my
maybe?
question is, you say we're only gonna come out that far, you're gonna come out 250 feet from the river.
That's, well, yes, to
Okay,
the
that was
east
my
end of the
question.
building, which is about 200 feet west of any river driveway.
Okay, that was my question. I should ask you first.
Thank you. My wife out there told me I need to apologize for everyone. I know you guys are just trying to do the right thing by the citizens of this great community. I've been here for about 17 years, spent a lot of time on the kayaks in the water. I don't know how many of you guys been there recently, but there are kayaks out there seeing manatees. And there are manatees out there, and they're in dire need of our help. So this project will not help them. It will hurt them. It's that simple. If we were school kids in a playground, we would not be doing this for the money. We would be doing it for the good of the environment, for the animals. What happened to all that stuff? I know there are boaters out here. I understand and appreciate it. I had a boat myself. But there are places, and I'll tell you, that we're 156 miles of lagoon. I've said this before. We're 15 miles from one inlet, and we're 18 from the other. Right in the middle is the most narrowest portion of the entire 156-mile lagoon, right here. Is this a place for a 123-foot yacht? I don't think so. Manatees and wildlife come in here, naturally migrating from the north and the south. It's known. Fish and Wildlife will tell you this. I've talked to them. I've talked to several of them, state and federal, Fish and Wildlife people. Again, I apologize for the passion, but I've been 17 years here, and I left a place in New Jersey that did the same thing and the same mistakes. We got to stop it now, because once we lose the natural resources that we have in our community, 8% of the entire lagoon, we lose our community. It's gone. We have boats, people happy, but we lose our community. No one wants to come. Why do you think people come here from Miami, Fort Lauderdale? They migrate here like the mammals because it gets too crowded. So they move up or they move down. This is a community that was built on a culture. We're losing that culture, guys, and that's my passion. So this is the management of this. This is the Marina Commission who brought you, Councilman, trusting their judgments. They brought you this information without exploring all of the options. And one of the options is just fix up the marina. Hell, we got the money. Let's do it. Let's not consider bringing and inundating this narrowest portion of the lagoon with more engines. Now, by the way, 30-foot boats, what do you got, 2 engines on there? So it's 150 boats, and I apologize to you especially, sir. I do. I don't take this, it's not personal. It's not. They can't talk for the species, the fish. Somebody said the fish. The most poisonous fish in the lagoon today is the sheep's head. Anybody want to know why? John Treffery knows why. He's done studies. John, would you like to talk on that? There's zinc, there's copper, there's high levels of metals on the pilings and on the mollusks that attach themselves to that. That's what the sheep's head eat. The most renowned scientist in this community who studied the lagoon for over 50 years told me the other day the most poisonous meat to eat on the lagoon is sheep's head. So we're looking at fish. Yeah, you could fish, but can you eat it? And I know it's 30 seconds, but we're doing the wrong thing here, guys. We gotta think that this is a new era. I know there are things changing. The population is growing, but it doesn't mean that we have to ruin our habitat along the way. And again, I apologize for my passion. It's not directed at any one of you guys. I love all my neighbors. Are you kidding me? I have no hatred toward anybody. So this is something that is really dear to my heart. You know why? I have children that live here, and they want to stay here. They love it here. They really do. And you know why they love it here? Because it is what it is. It's a natural habitat for humans. And it was, at one point, the most diverse estuary in the whole entire United States at one point. So we want to look at this very closely. And please, I will email you the Fish and Wildlife, Monty. You'll get that person. So I'll wait for that report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lamar Noter Giacomo. I live in Vero Beach, and I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. I just want to say amen to what the gentleman before me said. And most of the people that were here tonight are very much opposed to the expansion. Everyone understands that it needs to be repaired. So I would say fix it, don't expand it. And I came from Miami to escape the concrete jungle. And it's a no-brainer. If you build it, they will come. You know, if you just keep on building, yeah, they're going to keep on coming. It's at some point you got to put out the no vacancy sign and revert to the charter, which is protecting our quality of life here. I'm glad that Karen asked the question of you: are you keeping to your oath and your fiduciary responsibility? Are you maintaining our low density, small town quality of life? And I think you're being disingenuous if you say yes, you are. When you hire guys like Andres Duani, oh, by the way, if you want a code change for the Waddell building, you might want to call him because he boasts about how he's able to get around all the codes and the zoning laws. So now it makes more sense maybe why he was hired. But he also states we were elected to lead, not listen to constituents. That's not representative government, is it? I'm just asking the question, is that representative government? It's on video.
We're not here talking about Andreas Duani. We're here talking about the dry storage building.
You guys hired him to do your visioning. Another quote from Andres Duani, who you hired. You don't need to listen to anybody anymore. You've got to vote. The highest point of acceptance of this plan is Friday nights, which is the night after Zen. The longer you take, the more opposition awakes and poisons the chalice.
Ma'am, we're not here talking about Andreas Duani.
Every time you say this is only the beginning, you're sunk. Okay, so I do want to quote Mr. Jeffries because he made a comment to minute 44, 45. Somebody asked him, how is this property currently zoned, meaning the three corners? And he answers...
Excuse me, we're not talking about three corners tonight.
Well, it all ties together. I think other people have made that point. I think people have made that point, that you are going to change the charter.
Okay, that's ma'am, please stay on topic.
Okay, and so as far as the marina, this is what else Andres Duani said. Yes, there is a traffic problem. It's only going to get worse. Don't worry about that. And that was, I didn't move to Vero Beach 21 years ago because they had 25 or 30 restaurants. I moved because of this exquisite and pristine quality of life in a small town. We are rapidly losing our small town quality, putting 150 boats on the Indian River Lagoon, where it's as somebody pointed out earlier, the narrowest part of the lagoon, is a huge mistake. So I appreciate your time. I would be falling asleep if I was you right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Rob Dreyfus, Vero Beach. I wasn't going to come tonight. I was concerned about health and the crowd. So I was listening to it on the live stream. I couldn't stay away. There's been a lot of passion, a little bit of venom. I heard the word disinformation. That's regrettable. A couple of council meetings ago, someone spoke about South Florida being a voting community. That's what we're all about. That struck me as novel and a really strange idea. And it made me think of the polarization which we read about in the news all the time. The Democrats gotta get together with other Democrats, Republicans with other Republicans, and we can't get anything done. So I really appreciate the dilemma you're in. I'll get to the questions soon. It seems to me, as I try to boil down a great deal of data, that we have people representing the interests of a quiet community that's preserved itself. There's been other attempts to expand, they've been resisted. And there's a voting community, and they're passionate, and they have their rights with their votes. They have their friends with their votes too. They want to come here. It's a great place. So the question is, how are you going to resolve the incredible tension between the land people, some of whom have votes, we have a little kayak, and the water people? It feels like a lot of divisiveness to be able to sort your way through. God bless you handling how you're going to do that.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Clark on Rio Vista Boulevard. I don't normally step up and rock the boat, pun intended there, but I thought I would just make my 2 cents because I've heard a lot of great comments on both sides, and I'm really pretty neutral for the whole situation, considering my location to this property. I did hear some comments earlier, and I thought there was a couple really good ones that might end up being great suggestions. Instead of necessarily going forward with the entire plan, a gentleman talked about maybe phases of the building, and obviously it wouldn't be as economical to build it in 2 or 3 different phases, but it also does sort of bridge the gap between the people that want certain things done before other things are done. So instead of necessarily, obviously the dry storage is a big concern because it's dilapidated. You got another building next to it that's going to come down, and then you have a third building in the front that is probably not an economical situation either because it's an older building itself that needs work. This thing here, I had Sean was nice enough to walk me and show me exactly how far out it goes. And that building doesn't even go to where the Waddell building's back is. It's before that. So that space out in front there is actually where the Waddell building was. It's going to be less obtrusive from the street. And I thought that was interesting because you don't really kind of see that just looking at that when you compare to where the other buildings are. So you guys are going to do what you're going to do. I got to drive by it and look at it. I got the idea that if it got built, probably within 6 months, I wouldn't think anything of it. I'd just probably drive by it just like normal, and it'd be probably a nicer thing to look at than what we're looking at now. So in that aspect, I kind of like the idea of having a newer building, something that's going to accommodate more people that actually want to vote. But one of my questions is, and there actually is a question here, is how often do these people that use the dry storage come to use it, and why is it that people use dry storage rather than boat storage, that just put it into the marina? I'm not really a boating guy, so I don't maybe understand.
For a variety of reasons, you know. For one, insurance purposes, they're both stored out of the water. So when hurricanes and we are in that zone, you know, that's a consideration, you know, as far as their insurance premiums. Secondly, it's the convenience. They make a phone call, they tell us their name and boat and what time they're going to be there, and we have the boat in the water as they're coming around the corner of the building. So I mean, it's a boutique type service that's a little bit more beneficial as opposed to just having a boat in a wet slip.
So these boaters that are coming in and storing their boats, they're probably not the people that are coming out on a daily basis to use their boat. I can't assume somebody wants to drop their boat in the water and spend the extra expense every day to go out there.
No, I think we probably average about 15 boats a week. So and that's what we currently have now with 54, 56 boats. So now we get up to around that 150 number, we can expect that to trend up in that same proportion. So now we're about, 45 to 50 boats.
So you're putting 45 to 50, you expect maybe 45 to 50 boats being put in and out of the water on a daily basis?
A week.
A weekly basis?
A week.
Okay. To me, that doesn't sound like that many. It doesn't sound like it's so obtrusive that it's going to really harm, the river that's going on. Not that it won't increase what's going on in the river, but it doesn't sound to me like the dry storage is actually the big issue when it comes to, the river itself, which seems to be a big topic here today too. I don't know. I'm not necessarily.
30 seconds.
Okay. I guess I was gonna say my biggest suggestion would be maybe we could do like the modular, like the gentleman said earlier, where you maybe do half the building and do some of the other things that everybody else wants to get done, and then come back later if it seems like there's a more demand and there's still demand, and just put another one and attach it to it. I mean, maybe it costs a little bit more money to do that, but maybe it also offsets a lot of these people's issues that they've been coming up with. So that's it.
Thank you.
Question, Sean. How many of the boats that are currently in storage now have unpainted bottoms?
I would have to go count them, give you a number. That have non-painted bottoms, I'd probably say 60%.
Well, because we're using copper and a lot of other heavy metals occasionally on these, and we've got some new paints that are way better. But currently, there is some sloughing that goes off on when we use bottom paint that sits in the marina. So having it in the boat storage facility is actually a significant improvement.
Yes, bottom paints are made up of a variety of soft, and the vast majority that are in use are ablative, which means they're designed to gradually wear off as boats travel through the water to keep that reaction and keep the growth going on there. So boats in dry storage don't require it. So if you have an older boat that's got it, that's just what's there.
Good evening, I'm Joy Collins, and just to be transparent, I am Sean's wife, but I also pay taxes. Okay, how many residents do we have in Vero Beach?
17,000 plus or minus.
Okay, how many, what percentage of that, or what number of that live in Central Beach?
Actually, it's the largest voting district in the whole city. So precinct 17 is the largest precinct in the city.
But what's your definition of Central Beach? Because some people have different definitions.
Well, I don't live there, but I keep hearing Central Beach.
I can tell you the planning definition of Central Beach is, it's, trying to think it's basically what they call the flower streets and the tree streets in Central Beach.
You forgot the bird streets.
Well, there's a point where you get so far north, and then get to what we call the Bethel Creek neighborhood, and then you go south, you get around Castaway, that's called South Beach, getting down there. So essentially, it's the flower and the tree streets.
Then you get to Riamar, and then from Riamar.
Okay, but do we have a percentage of the total population?
I don't know off the top of my head or the population.
We promised we wouldn't answer questions we didn't know the answer to.
Okay. Well, what I'm getting at is, even somebody from Central Beach said there's like 100 signs out. 100 opposition, 100 signs. We've got 19,000 people, 17,000 people, excuse me, 17,000 people in this community. And all of the ones that went and voted for everybody, because it's a community. So, if of that 17,000, 100 signs are out as opposition, that's not a vast majority. The other thing I wanted to know is how many of the homes in Central Beach, we know what it is now, have had their septic tanks converted. Another gentleman said 35%. I don't know if that's true. If that is the number one cause that causes detriment to the lagoon, then that needs to be addressed immediately. Before we worry about putting boats in the water that are, trust me, those boats all go to California, and you can't get anything in the water in California if it's going to do any harm whatsoever, so they all are built that way. And we've gotten away from two-stroke engines that you had to add the oil. This is a whole different ballgame now. But I strongly suggest that we look at our septic tanks. Also, bottom payment. I don't know if everybody realizes, but if you keep a boat in the water, it has to have bottom paint on it. Years ago, it used to have copper in it. You can't have copper, but they are coming up with anything they can to make sure that nothing grows on the bottom of those boats. The more boats that you can keep out of the water and without any bottom paint, it is so much more beneficial to the water, any of the water that it's in. And my last question is, if we rebuild the exact size of the dry storage, is that serviceable? Is it serviceable? Do they still make equipment that will work in those small confines?
That question was for you, Sean.
As I've grumbled about that, coming here early on, it was the first forklift that we had, well, the one that was existing when I took over, was scary. It was quite the challenge, and I was close, and I've had a conversation with the city manager about pulling the trigger of shutting the dry storage down. And fortunately, after a year and a half, we finally got a lead on this 15-year-old small forklift to operate in there. None of the forklift manufacturers are making small forklifts to operate in such tight confines. So that's another challenge as well.
Sean, I have a question. How many, are you going to retain your newer forklift after the project's complete?
Yes, we're going to keep the existing one we have now, and there will be a second.
And then a new one?
Yeah. Traditionally, most dry storage facilities have at least two. Yeah, it'll still do the smaller boats, and then we get in a certain life cycle. At some point, we'll go ahead and train that one and then get a comparable one, so we have two identical.
Traffic and noise. I don't know how many people have been down trying to go turn on whatever that road, Indian River Drive or whatever it is, right there at the light. When the school lets out, you can't get in. You cannot get in. And we also talk about the yacht club. The yacht club has, sorry, Mr. Neville, 650 members. Now we happen to go down and walk because I wanted to see exactly what the residents were seeing and why they were so upset not in my backyard. Well, you can't really see hardly anything because of the trees. And we took a bunch of pictures, can't see. But the night we were down there, they were having a concert. Oh boy, there was a lot of people down there, and it was at night. The marina, if I'm correct, closes at 5. That means the forklift shuts off. That means everything that goes on in business hours, everybody, that's their home, those people that are there, and they don't want to deal with a lot of noise and stuff. So, when we're talking about it, we need to look at everything, not just the microscope on the particular things that some people want to address. You gotta look at everything. And I still go back to how many residents there are and how many opponents.
30 seconds. Thank you.
I'm done. Oh, wait, excuse me. Wait.
Time's up.
I want to read this. This touches
No.
all the bases.
Ma'am,
It's a green space, it's open to the
Ma'am.
community, it's for the public good, and it's fully inclusive.
Thank you.
That was about, it could be about the marina. That was about the,
Shooting range.
yes. And that was
Thanks.
Mr. Catudno. So I would
Thank you.
use that for the whole.
Oh, God, thank you.
Thanks for calling. The step question, there is a map online at the city's website. Go to the GIS maps and you can see what properties have the step systems, which ones don't.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Long night for you folks.
Hang on, Kim.
Sure.
Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, you want the city's the homepage, go to covb.org.
Right.
You click on GIS maps, and one of the GIS maps is the inventory of the step systems, where it's available, how many have converted.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, Ken Day, city resident, address 1846 21st Avenue. I do not own a boat as of yet. You never know in the near future. There are a lot of things I wanted to say tonight, but I'll keep it as short as I possibly can. A number of years ago, we did a Visions project, and one of the things that it talked about throughout when we were doing the Visions project was the importance of Vero Beach neighborhoods. And to hear them first, because things that happen in this city do have an impact on them. You've certainly heard from the residents over in this area that are extremely concerned with this expansion plan. They're very concerned about the size of the building. You heard plenty of that tonight. By bringing more, this is just a little city marina, that was the intent. That's why it's protected in the charter. And I hope as you go home this evening or tomorrow, you think about the impact that this is not only going to have on that particular neighborhood, but the surrounding areas. And yes, for the most part, lots of times you can say boats run fairly clean, you know, with the new fuels and all that. As we move on in the future, and if the economy stays high, and that's just a guess, you'll have more people coming here with boats. They're expensive things to put on the river there. That area is only so large. And you have to think about, as elected officials, how much do you want to impact that area? We are a very unique community here, and we knew a number of years ago we would be faced with these type of situations. It was our hope that we would have elected officials that could be good judges in this situation. When you come into this city office, you do, all of you I know, review the charter. There are protected lands in there. And you have to think about that. Are you going to protect these areas of the city? The city marina is low impact. Let's just face it. So you're being asked tonight basically to downsize your plan. You'll either, as an elected body, downsize the plan as a whole, move on with the repairs. There's no argument about that. That was talked about when a number of years ago when we were talking about bringing in the consultant to look at the repairs and everything that had to be done on the marina. The repairs were put off, which I'm not going to go into all the reasons. The city just didn't have the money. The city for many, many, many years was on one track to do one particular issue. So that sucked basically all the air out of the room. That took precedence. So now you're faced with repairing the marina. This entered into, as far as enlarging the situation in the last few years. You had the virus situation, got away from a lot of people, but now you're hearing from them. So it is my hope that downsize the plan. I'm in the renovation business. We do things in phases. It's not, you've heard enough tonight that it's just too much for people. It's too much what you're trying to do. If you do what you're going to do, that's up to you guys. You're going to vote on it. We, the people out here, every one of us in this room that is a city voter, all of us, including myself, we voted for someone up on that dais. And if you guys make the decisions that are not too kosher for us that live in the city, and we vote, that's where you have the powers at the ballot box. We'll have to take care of it in November. You will do what you will do as an elected body. I just hope you would keep surrounding neighborhood in your minds. We have issues over on the mainland where things do impact us, where people forget about our neighborhoods. I know how it feels when we're going to be impacted. And you run numbers all you want. Well, it's this many over here, that many over here. You have a surrounding neighborhood that is really worried about what's going to happen over there. So again, you're the folks, I always say this, you're the folks with the pencil. You will decide the fate of that neighborhood. It's up to you all. You've heard enough tonight. Hopefully you'll consider some of the things you heard tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my time to talk. I don't have any questions. Leslie Tilley, 3628 Rio Vista Boulevard, and I've been waiting 4 years for the step system, and waited 2 years, and then was asked to go to Gravity, and that just didn't seem to fit. My husband died in the meantime, and a couple months after he died, even though my thinking wasn't real clear, I was able to do a little brief research, and even though Rob Bolton was asking me, and I'm saying all this because I live at 3628 Rio Vista Boulevard. Look it up. I have a septic tank. The septic tank is a teenager. The field is shot, okay? I get my septic tank drained, once a year. So I do the math, and I get the drawing, and it says 12, and it looks like inches. Well, it's 150 feet. There is no sewer line running up to my house. And what the city wanted me to do is run the line myself over my neighbor's yard, but I only had 12 inches of drop. I figured it out. 150 feet, you need 36 inches, depending on the bore of the pipe.
And we need to stick with the dry storage building here.
What's that?
So we need to stick to the topic of the dry storage building.
This is a topic because it has been brought up that you can go to a certain website and look at who's on the step and who's not. So I'm going to speak to the septic right now. So I'm the one that went to Mr. Bolton and said, Gravity will not work because if I put Gravity in, I'll have to pay for the line running across my neighbor's yard, 2 driveways and his lawn. And not only that, if I agreed to it and didn't think about it, I would need 3 pumps to pump that because there's not enough drop. But the city wanted me to commit to that. Now I'm still waiting for the city to bring me a line up. I paid the city for the equipment and it's delayed because of supply problems. I paid the electrician and I'm still waiting to go on the step system. Okay, as far as, the Marina, it is a difference when you walk down Rio Vista Boulevard and you're going to walk into a wall, a 38-foot, no, wait, it's closer to 50 because of the embellishment at the top roof. It's a taller building than what you're saying, and it was discussed here. There is a difference when you're not going to see the baseball field lights at night that you've seen for 32 years when you step out and you walk your young kids down the street and your dog, and you're not going to see them. You're going to see a wall, and you're not going to see the bridge anymore. You're not going to see the dog park. You're going to see a wall. It's scale. The building does not fit there. I don't mind the old building. Scale back. Let's go back to what was actually approved in 2019, and I was there at the Marine Commission, and then I was there and you guys weren't there, but I was there when they approved the concept 3, which was double the size building. It was not this triple size building. Triple size building came along during COVID when nobody was paying attention and the plan was changed. But concept 3 was a double size building. Okay, thank you so much. And we wanted to show a video if Mr. Tech Person Holt can come in. We just wanted to show a video.
What?
Right there.
Is it already, we had it already loaded? Okay.
So are we gonna, it's still a question period, or we pass
I'm trying to be nice.
So we're gonna have a comment period.
We're hoping since everybody's falling asleep that this will help. But actually, this may actually help relax you a little. We'll see. We've heard some talk about visioning. I'm Florence Ann Roberts, city resident. And I'm almost starting to cry looking at this. Leslie and I, listen. This was filmed a week ago in the little basin on the north side of the marina. The one that's been called, I don't know, North Lagoon, East Lagoon. And it's the one where in the final plan, there would be a plan to put in a lot more docks. I know we're only talking about dry storage, but what if we
And I would ask you to stick to that topic,
yes,
please.
which I am. What I wanted to say here, because we're talking about, we heard that no, the bottom painted, no problems with that, no copper, nothing. But manatees are still in our area. And I don't know whether you could see that on this film, but when we were out there, we watched for a half an hour as a manatee fed on the mangroves on the edge of that little basin. There he is. So we'd like you to, when you're envisioning what you're going to do with this marina, if we really look forward and we say, what do we want our children to have? And what do we want our citizens to have? And I'm talking about all the citizens. We want them healthier. We want them to have, yes, a clean lagoon, a safer place to launch kayaks and canoes. And it could be beautiful for all of us. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, under in public comment.
I thought we were in the, can I make a comment? Because I thought we were in the question and answer period.
No, we were.
No, come on, I went up there and asked you if this was a question period or comment period. You said,
Can I answer you? I thought it was both. That was the answer I gave you.
well, that was deceptive.
A pretty straightforward answer.
I think it was 3 hours and 45 minutes
I
ago.
mean, I'm just going by the rules, and before you have to have a vote, you have to have a comment period. You can't make up rules as you go along.
We're not making the rules or
We're not
going
voting
on.
yet.
All right, well, that's very sad. You have to be that way.
Okay.
Saskia Fuller. I am very torn to come up here because I understand everybody's concerned. The neighborhoods, I would be also concerned if I would live there. I'm very concerned about the lagoon. I'm a boater. But I would like to say this, if you are concerned, if you are going to fill this building, don't be concerned. I know this because I have worked at the marina for 3.5 years. The amount of people that have called us to get a place in this building is enormous. We were advised not to take any kind of people on a wait list for a building that might take boats up to 30, 35 feet because it was not or is not decided yet. So the current building only takes 22 feet. the amount of people we turned away is humongous. So no matter how big this building would be, you would fill it, and that is one of the things I wanted to say. So I do share everybody's concern. I'm a voter, so it's a tough decision for sure, but yeah, that it is.
Thank you. Okay, any public comment? Any comments by the council?
Very helpful to get all these different viewpoints and so forth, so it's definitely appreciated as I particularly kind of think about this, so thank you all very much.
I'd like to thank everybody who made their comments tonight, who showed up and been at this for quite a bit of time. I guess I have the distinction of being the newest council member, so I haven't sat through this entire process of bringing this to this point in time, where all these people in this dais have spent a lot of time and effort and investing their time in looking at this. But I live in this community, by the way. I happen to live in Central Beach, and walk that marina on a daily basis. I've met with a lot of the people who are involved in this discussions here. And to pluck something out of the current news, Vero Beach is not a marina that's disguised as a city. We just happen to be a city that owns a marina. And I think when we look at this, and when I will look at this with a different pair of eyes than my colleagues, I am looking at this as a marina that needs to be upgraded and refurbished, a marina that needs a new storage facility that will blend into the community and not be obtrusive to the community, and a marina that will be compatible with our neighborhood. And again, I have the ability of seeing all their efforts and get to look at this from a different perspective. But again, the effort that Sean and his staff have put this plan together is what I don't think City Council or Monty and his team can have asked for anything more. You've got all the data here, and I guess it's now up for us to have discussions and try to come to consensus of the community to come up with a situation that will be a win. Will provide some revenue to the city, and will also provide a marina that we can all be proud of in the years to come, and maintains the tradition that we've had up until this time. Thank you.
Protecting neighborhoods is very important to me. It's the integrity of where we live. And hearing all these comments tonight's very important. It's a balance between a lot of the emails that have been flooding City Hall on this matter. I look forward to a robust discussion on this and seeing where we go. This marina had a fabulous reputation for decades. Just leave it there. And then in the recent past, it has fallen into disrepair. And I'm very happy that we have the opportunity at this point to restore it. And we'll see where we go. I think our major decision is going to be, the size of this storage building. But I think we have fabulous staff working, and I'm very pleased with all the information that's been coming forward. Our consultants in particular, it needs to be very clearly understood as we go forward with the site plans. There is a huge permitting process that's going to happen with the Army Corps of Engineers, who will work with Fish and Wildlife, environmental issues, manatees, the whole bit. There's nothing that's going to be overlooked when you're dealing with the Army Corps. I have experience working with them. So I hope there's a comfort level on the permitting process as far as that goes, and we can, not be so afraid of going forward, because that's really important. I'm looking forward to a good discussion with the council. Thank you.
You know, when my parents and I moved down here in 1950, towing a little 14-foot runabout, and tossed it in that city marina many years ago with a Martin 60 engine on the back, if anybody remembers one of those things. So we lived on Camellia Lane for, I don't know, my family did until 1976. Then we moved to Dave Palm Road, where I reside now. So I'm pretty deep into the Central Beach area that everyone is talking about. I understand you, Mrs. Tilly. I understand that you are probably the most directly affected by this. But on the other hand, we have a community to serve, and it's going to be a very difficult decision to, on my part, because on the other hand, I'm kind of stumbling over this because I don't know how exactly to phrase this, but there is a boating community out there that needs to be served. I think that the building that we've designed here is attractive. I think I'll just point out that the school board built a much larger building than this along Beachland Boulevard. The folks that live on Azalea are affected in the same way. They come up against this very large white building. So I would observe that, and it hasn't really affected, I think, the quality of life for those people that live around it. And I think once a facility gets built, we'll not know exactly the size, I guess, until we really get down to discussing it at another time. But I think once it's built and it's established, it will blend in and be part of the community.
I'll just say that, you know, decisions like this are never easy. And I know that everybody has their opinions on it, and everybody has thoughts about it, and how it affects them differently. And I can appreciate that and respect that. But I think this council has done a good job over the years of going through the weeds and trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing. You know, I don't like anybody ever thinking that I'm doing something that's going to hurt this community. I was born and raised here. I'm third generation. Okay, my family built a lot of this community. In fact, my family did all the historical buildings downtown. Myself, my father, my brother, and we spent a lot of time and money down here to preserve this area. And so we'll take a long, hard look at this, and we'll make a decision. But I can assure you that any decision we make, or that I make, when I vote, will not have anything to do with thinking I'm hurting the area, that I'm trying to grow the area too fast or anything else like that. I think we have to plan accordingly for the 20 to 30 year process. And that's what we're trying to do. Now, what that means, we'll figure it out here in the next couple weeks, I guess. But we'll have to make those decisions. But it's something that this council will have to do, and we will do it. And I can tell you, when I do it and cast my vote, I will have given it a lot of deep thought and a lot of consideration for everything that's been said here, and also all the emails we've received from both sides of the fence and people that I talk to when I walk through downtown every day and beachside. So, okay. With that, staff have anything else?
Mr. Mayor, thank you, and I want to thank staff and the consultants. It's been a long day today, and thank you for your attendance, and thanks to the crowd for bearing with us and tolerating us and being nice to us.
Yes, I want to also say that thank you to everybody who attended the meeting. It was well attended, and we will get through this. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned at 9:55.
Thank you.